Hello and welcome back to my channel, What If Deku 2? Join us as we delve into the realms of fanfiction and fantasy, bringing you the best stories and discussions. Today, we're kicking off part 22 of our series, What If Everyone Gets Obsessed with Deku and Had Harem? If you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content in the future. The author of this story is Guy number 23 from FanfictionNet. All the relevant links are in the description. Feel free to say hello to the author on their profile. Now, let's dive into the fanfic. The mist kept flooding the room, slowly drifting towards them. There was no way back, so their only option was to go forward. That was what passed through Maruko's mind. Ryukyu, I know you want to do this the safe way, but we don't have that option right now, she said with a surprisingly calm tone, staring at the enemy. It's not that I want a safe way. If we act carelessly here, we won't be in conditions to fight later on. The kids are still in danger. Yeah, I know, I'm not deaf. But if we don't get out of here, it will be the same, she turned to the dragon hero. She didn't want to sound frustrated nor lash out at her current partner, but having to stay put really made her get sort of angry and somewhat impotent. I know, said the dragon hero. She stepped forward, eyes focused on the villain behind that steel dome. So you go ahead and do what you always do. Ryukyu didn't elaborate further. She just changed into her dragon form and flew towards the dome, taking a deep breath before crossing the toxic mist. Her eyes immediately began to water, but she would need to endure it. Ryukyu, and she calls me impulsive? She understood what was her plan, but it didn't make it any less risky. The giant dragon sunk her claw into the metal dome. The steel covering helped a little, but she still encountered resistance trying to pry it open. The angle didn't help either, and holding her breath only delayed the effects of the mist. Her lungs ached, and she felt like her nostrils were in flames, but she had to endure it. The shield groaned as she forced it open, slowly but surely removing it from the hinges. And right on time, because Ryukyu desperately needed to breathe. With one final pull, she tore the dome open, tossing one piece to the side, then tearing the rest. However, she found out the platform where the villain has vanished, and a huge toxic cloud hit her face. All that time the old man wasn't even here, and the worst part, she had already inhaled the damn mist. Cough, Maruko! Hurry up! Ryukyu shouted, letting go of the ceiling and flapping her wings down with all her power. The gust of wind opened the toxic curtain in half, making a secure path for the rabbit hero. Maruko quickly jumped up, expecting to see that decrepit villain's face, but he was nowhere to be found. Instead, the hole Ryukyu opened exposed a tunnel with rails. So that's how that bedridden geezer moved around. TCH, he escaped and let us die. Coward piece of shit. We have to catch up with him, Ryukyu. No response came. Boy, Ryu, her ruby red eyes widened. Ryukyu. The dragon hero lay on the floor, back to her human form, barely visible amid the cloud. Hey, get up in here already. The blondie made an effort to stand up, but she failed. Cough, just go ahead. It was my plan anyway. Her words were cut as she threw up. She tried to take the lead role as best as she could. She tried to be strong and follow the plan. She tried to make everyone work together as a team. She tried to predict how the villains would act, but clearly there was a limit to her efforts. Despite her complaints, Maruko was a very capable hero. She could deal with the villains if she just reached them. As for herself, Ryukyu was satisfied with how far she came. So long as the kids were fine, she was okay with this. I just wanted to do more. Her vision blurred and faded to black. She felt sick in the stomach and her limbs numbed. But then, she felt herself being picked up from the floor. She didn't need her vision to know who it was. I told you to go ahead. And since it was a stupid suggestion, I decided to ignore it. Cough. Maruko held Ryukyu firmly in her arms, took impulse, and jumped, hitting her back on the ceiling of the tunnel. A rough landing, but at least they were out of that death cloud. She gasped for air, checking the vitals of her partner. Hey, stay awake, okay? Don't you dare close your eyes, you hear me? Ryukyu groaned in response. They are the priority, she said, slowly propping herself on the wall so she could sit. Sure, but I'm not letting you behind. I didn't think you would be that dumb. I'll just slow you down. The rabbit hero offered a smile as she placed one arm around Ryukyu, helping her to stand up and walk. You're doing this ever since we partnered up. I'm getting used to it. Plus, I'm not your subordinate or anything. If you want to save those brats, then help me out. The two cat-themed heroes were in a pinch. Surrounded, they couldn't do much but hold their defenses as much as they could, since the villains were controlling an army of civilians against them. The best they could do now was push and shove, and block their punches and kicks. No one in that crowd was particularly dangerous to them, but the sheer numbers would literally crush the pro heroes if they stopped moving. Shit, this doesn't end, Pixie Bob complained, tossing someone over her shoulder as carefully as possible. I know, but we don't have a choice. We can't hurt these people. Look. Mandalay held a woman's arm in place, locking eyes for a moment, and she could see the tears rolling down her face as if she was begging for forgiveness. It's okay. We know it's not your fault. We'll save you, okay? She tried reassuring the lady, but internally she couldn't be more worried, and externally, someone grabbed her from behind. Hey, don't just stand still. The blonde hero pushed the person away from her friend, and they jumped around, trying to make some distance between them and the crowd. Fortunately, the room was large enough to give them some space, but at some time, they could find themselves cornered by a wall. TCH, how are we going to deal with all those people, even if Toro was here? We can't hurt them, but we also can't run forever. We have to stop the person controlling them, Mandalay said, looking at the girl sitting atop the throne. On that said throne, Doll laughed as she watched the heroes struggling with this dilemma. Ha 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 ha, this is much funnier than I expected. Watching two cats being chased by a bunch of little mice. Ironic, am I right? Leech stood by her side idly, leaning on the throne and with closed eyes, clearly bothered that she had to stay there. Sounds pretty stupid, actually. Well, I like this kind of irony. Exquisite. Ha 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 ha. Sai, I don't know why we have to go through this convoluted plan. If the objective is to kill all heroes, why not make it quick? Oh, my short-sighted friend, it's not just about killing the false idols. It's about sending a message. We have to put them on a display of shame so everyone understands just how fake they are. They don't come to save everyone. Not if they can't be in the spotlight while doing so. Doll stared at the running heroes, but her mind seemed to wander. She recoiled herself on the throne, hugging her knees. Meanwhile, Leech glanced at her with a somewhat worried look. You really bought into Rust's idea. You didn't? I thought you of all people would be the most understanding. You know what people are really thinking, after all. Sai, sometimes it is better not to know what a person's inner demons are. Doll seemed to ponder over it briefly and then turned her focus back to the ongoing fight, if you could call it that. It was more like a massive game of tag where everyone was trying to catch the two pro heroes. She lifted the arm of the throne and produced a silver goblet. Then, the goth girl began to pour a dark red liquid from a concealed tap on the arm. Whatever. Why don't we spice things up a bit, she said, holding the chalice up as if making a toast. Ugh, do you need to drink it like that? Humph, do I look like that unrefined meathead to you? I can say what you want to hear, or the truth. Which one? They stared daggers at each other for a second. Well then, my precious dolls, the second act is about to start, she exclaimed, sipping from the goblet. Mandalay and Pixie Bob noticed that, and right after, the crowd of civilians began to run after them. The robotic movements were practically gone. That's bad, that's really bad, said the blondie. At this rate, they would be forced to take drastic measures. That girl, we have to take her down, but if we get close, she will freeze us again. How about we distract her? She needs to be focused, right? We would need a big distraction for that work. Yuko, can you use your quirk here? There are too many layers around the room. I don't know, maybe if I try very hard, she said, looking at the metal floor. All right, I'll buy you some time, Mandalay said, then rushed towards the crowd. Wait, what? Shino, even if I could use it here, it's too dangerous. The whole structure might collapse. Did you forget we're underground? No, she stopped briefly to look back at her partner. But we have to save these people, and the kids are in great danger on their own against those villains. I won't allow something like that to happen again. The redhead held a determined look that Pixie Bob understood perfectly. No need for telepathy to know what she meant. I know you can do it, she said, and resumed her sprint towards the mob. Huh, does she think she can stop all those people on her own? Rather, is she really going to attack them? Doll mused, looking quite surprised. Leech squinted her eyes. They're planning something. She took a step forward, but Doll held her wrist. Hey, we're in the middle of an act, remember, she pointed upwards, prompting Leech to roll her eyes and go back to her place. Whatever. Just don't blame me when things blow up in your face. Ha 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 ha, very funny. As if those pathetic excuses for heroes could do anything against me. All right, my pretty red-haired cat doll, let's play. The mob began to chase Mandalay, trying to surround her. She then began to distance herself as much as she could from Pixie Bob. Turning on her heels, the pro-hero raised her fists and got ready to fight. Her fierce glare went to the elevated throne for a second, then melted away as she faced the crowd in front of her. Behind her was the wall. Good, she took the bait. Now all I have to do is hold them here and buy time for Ruko. Hang on, kids, we're going to rescue you. Definitely. Meanwhile, the blondie looked at the floor intently. She kneeled, placing one hand on the metal floor. Pixie Bob closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and exhaled slowly. Come on, Ruko, you can do this. She's counting on you. The kids are counting on you. Yash, let's do it. In one of the other rooms, a battle of attrition went on still. The hardening duo of heroes tanked hit after hit from the crazed villain drenched in her own blood, attacking them relentlessly. Blood Frenzy wasn't only strong, but pretty fast and resistant too. It didn't matter how many string counters they landed whenever an opening appeared, she kept getting up, always grinning and laughing. Ha 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 ha. I've never met guys so tough as you two. Being able to go all out like this is the best high I've ever had, she said, lunging at them with a fist drawn back. There was no form to her attacks, nor concern for defense. At this stage, she didn't need to care about being hit. She aimed at Red Riot, who blocked the punch with his arms in a cross shape, heels sinking into the metal floor as he got pushed back by the impact. Even with his quirk, he winced in pain, and just like they did the last time, and the other time before that, and every other since Sun Eater captured Health Pack, Real Steel landed a powerful punch to her face, sending the tall woman a few steps back. They were doing that exchange for a while now, one of them taking the hit while the other strikes back. Whether this was effective or not they weren't sure, but that was the best they could do for now. Kirishima was breathing heavily. He made sure to only harden his body at the moment of impact to conserve his stamina. But even then he felt like he was running out of steam, not to mention just how crazy strong their opponent was. The same was going on for Tetsu, as he began to feel the effects of iron depletion in his body. There was only so much those nutrition bars Kenda suggested he carries could do. Man, she doesn't stop. Did she really need that girl's blood to keep going? Asked the metal teen, glancing back at the girl wrapped in Sun Eater's arms. Probably not, but she had to have a limit. Bleeding like that, she has to drop at some point, Kirishima said, taking a deep breath. Yeah, but what about ours? Tetsu did the same. They had to ignore their bodies screaming at them for overdoing it and endure the fight as much as they could. No, losing wasn't an option here. Across the arena, the bloody Amazon recovered her senses again. Damn, you guys also hit hard. But I know you are getting tired. It's okay, that's your limit right there, she said, then pointed at the other hero behind them. You, Yellow Cape, I'm going for you next. Now, why don't we do that legend thing? How was it again? The strongest spear versus the strongest shield. I'll be the spear, okay? They clenched their fist in anticipation. She's going all out now, right? Yeah, not gonna lie, that's a bit scary. Kirishima, let me tank the next hit. The redhead teen glanced surprised at his friend. He wasn't in a better shape than him, and it would be better if they tried to share the load in some way. Oi, Tetsu, now is not the time to test your strength. That's not it, bro. He stepped forward, bringing his guard up and accepting Blood Frenzy's challenge. We've matched on pretty much everything, but I can feel I won't last much longer. That low iron stuff, so make sure you take her down in the next strike. So you're going to be the shield. Great, I'll break you, then I'll break the shirtless dude, and then I'll fight with Yellow Cape. This will be awesome. Blood Frenzy shouted her plans, licking the blood from her cut lips. These two, right now I'm counting on them tiring the enemy so I can finish her off. Letting this kid get near her again would leave us with a fully healed villain while we're exhausted. Depending on the result of this challenge, I might have to enter the fight immediately. Sun Eater stood in the back vigilantly. If another villain appeared, or if she tried to reach for the little girl, he would prevent that. The girl herself didn't offer much resistance, and she seemed pretty fixed in the fight too, although her tired face made it look like she was dozing off. Perhaps she was. The tension in the air increased as they waited for the next move. Under any other circumstances, the heroes wouldn't have time to catch their breath. But to this woman, it was all a huge game of violence, and she wanted to make the most of it. I said we've matched, but honestly I think Kiri bro is ahead of me. Maybe his hardening is a little better, and he doesn't get tired as I do, but whatever. I don't want to prove anything, but it might show how far I've got. He hit his chest with a fist, making a metallic clank sound. Come, this shield will definitely not break, Real Steel taunted her. That's right, that's how it has to be. Fights have to go to the very end, no prison bullshit. If you lose, you die, simple as that. Then, Blood Frenzy readied herself, grinning like a maniac. Let's fight all the way to hell. Here she comes. Both teens thought as they saw the tall woman run full speed at him. Blood Frenzy was pretty above their level in a fight, by sheer raw power. If it wasn't for Fatgum and Sun Eater injuring and tiring her before, they would probably be knocked out cold by now, if not worse. Even then, it was as if she didn't have an upper limit to how stronger she could get, or how many times she could fall and get back up. She was an unstoppable force, and Tetsu knew he wasn't the immovable object to face that. But this is something he had figured out long ago when he began to train. Just because you think you can still go, doesn't mean your body can get there. She didn't pull a single punch back and took everything they threw at her with open arms. She was way stronger than them, but in a matter of resistance, they would not lose. A spear can lose its edge, but a shield doesn't have such concern. Plus, who said you can only defend with a shield? Hardcore, iron wall. At the last second, Tetsu shifted his feet, sliding to the side and letting Blood Frenzy's body come at him. It would be like having a car crashing at him at full speed. At that same moment, he firmed his feet on the floor and raised his elbow, pushing forward. It was a technique Kendo has taught him back then, but he didn't find a use for it until now. Similar to his partner's Unbreakable, he raised the hardness of his body to the maximum, tensing every fiber to the extreme at the point of impact. It was a defense using the opponent's strength against them, adding your own to it. He didn't need to be stronger than her, just more resistant. The floor below his feet sunk a little, showing just how much energy the villain was carrying in that punch. Had it hit him, Real Steel would probably be out of the game for good. The results of his new super move, Blood Frenzy's conscience faded for a moment, her vision gone. One moment she had the metal boy in her sights, the other he wasn't, and then blackness, and the sensation of hitting a solid wall with her face. Right after, Red Riot followed with his attack, charging at full speed with one fist pulled back. Unbreakable, Red Gauntlet. His fist connected with her face, and he used all the momentum he could carry to drive that punch down to the floor. She hit the floor with a loud thud. The hardening duo, feeling the exhaustion catching up to them, took one step back, reverting to normal. Real Steel felt light-headed as the iron fatigue kicked in, and Red Riot felt his muscles ache after moving so much while completely hardened. Their eyes were glued on the villain, hoping this would be enough to knock her out for good. They waited and waited and waited, 2 very tense minutes until they released a long sigh of relief. "Huff man, for a moment I thought she was invincible or something," Kirishima said, resting one hand on Tetsutetsu's shoulder. "That was a pretty rad move, bro." "Yeah, but I can't fight anymore. I'm out of steam here," he said, leaning on his knees. "Rest as much as you can, we're not completely out of trouble yet," said Sun Eater as he rejoined them. He scanned the surroundings again. Something came and carried Fatgum away, so there was an exit somewhere in this room. "We still have to find Fatgum and regroup with the others. They're probably fighting other heads of the cult just like us." He cut his words short as he felt something tug at his cloak. Looking down, the little girl in his arms was looking back at him and pointing forward. Following the direction, the 3 young heroes watched in disbelief as the woman once again got up, still covered in blood and bruises, full of holes and everything. She wobbly got up and seemed to be having trouble keeping like that, but just the fact alone she was conscious was frightening. "Are you kidding?" said the red-haired teen, to no one in particular. "Unconscious." The 3 of them looked again at the little girl. She spoke so softly that it barely registered. What was that?" Sun Eater asked her. "Unconscious." They looked at her, at the woman she was pointing at, and then it clicked. "Wait, is she really fighting unconsciously?" Tetsutetsu looked again at Blood Frenzy. "No," she shook her head. "Unconscious, breaks frenzy, tired." Health Pack then held her hand up, showing how her wrist had a ring around it and a straw from which her blood came out. "Heal." She didn't elaborate further, but it was enough for them to put things together. That's probably why Health Pack was with her. At some point, the piled-up damage would catch up and she would need Health Pack to recover. Considering how she didn't mind killing the little girl along with them, it wouldn't be far-fetched to say Blood Frenzy would drain her if that meant she could keep fighting. Ha 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 ha, that pain, I've never felt this much pain before. Ha ha ha, it's kinda cool too, in its way. Blood Frenzy raised her head, bloodshot eyes trying to focus on the young heroes. "What? Tired already? I'm still up. I can cough, I want to fight more." The swollen eye and the creepy grin on her face only made her look even more insane. She wasn't kidding, they might have to really put her down. So far the young heroes didn't think about it. Despite being through a lot for their ages, the idea of taking someone's life never registered this clearly. Maybe some people were just too dangerous to be kept alive. But then, wouldn't this prove the point of that crazy blood cult? Red Riot took the front this time, raising a fist. "What do we do now, senpai?" Sun Eater weighed their options. There wasn't a good way, only less bad ones. He now had a useful piece of information in his hands. The girl he was holding had a healing quirk. They could use this to finish things here and move forward. But why would the girl even agree with that? Would this be the right thing? This girl, she wasn't part of this, was she? "Oi, I'm not done yet. I told you. Kill me or I won't stand down. This won't stop until someone drops dead." "Heroes," Blood Frenzy shouted, licking her wounds. "Kill or be killed. That's the only rule that—" Crash. Whatever it was the woman was shouting got drowned by the loud noise of metal bending and breaking. The walls of the room collapsed and a mass of dirt flowed in like an avalanche. an avalanche shaped like a beast, to be more precise. Earlier, Mandalay tried her best to fight back the crowd without hurting them too much, but it was proving to be very difficult. The best she could do was push back the controlled bodies and maybe throw the over, but that didn't help much either. Doll was playing with her and she knew it, otherwise she would have been overrun by the mob. But that was playing in her favor, as it gave Pixie Bob time to focus. The structure of this place was underground, and it had a thick layer of metal and concrete separating her from the earth she could control. She did try to control the earth from a distance, but it never worked well. Now she didn't have the luxury of not succeeding, so the blondie kept focusing and trying to feel the earth below. Meanwhile, the pair of villains watched from the elevated throne. "Hurry up and finish them off. We already got the point across," said Leech, glaring at the pro-hero pushing back the mob. "And why are you not chasing both of them? SHH, don't rush me. It's obvious they have some kind of plan, but it will be useless no matter what it is. I can always control them. Remember, this feeling of impotency. I want it to be the last thing they feel before. There was a moment of silence between them. "Before you kill them?" "Yeah, before that." "Do you really believe in what you're saying?" "Humph, are you doubting my resolve?" "Yes, it takes a special kind of resolve to kill someone." She looked directly at the goth girl, arms crossed in front of her chest. "How would you know? You've never killed before either, did you?" "Sigh, no, but I know what goes through the head of someone like Napalm and Frenzy. They're not normal at all, so are you sure you can do it?" Doll recoiled in her throne again, hugging her knees. Her mind seemed to wander a bit, but then she snapped out of it once she noticed her control over the crowd loosened up. "Shut up, I'm busy here. I have to focus, remember? Don't distract me with your stupid questions." And just like that, the mob returned to move like a synchronized hive mind. "Sigh, I guess that answers it, Leech looked over and saw the blue cat kneeling, her hands on the floor and her eyes closed. "Hey, what's the other one doing?" "How would I know? I guess she just gave up." "Does it look like she gave up, you idiot? She's trying to do something." And stop her." Doll looked at Leech with an annoyed face. "In case you didn't notice, I have my hands occupied right now. Would be a dear and, I don't know, deal with it yourself, since you're so bothered by it." Leech rolled her eyes, going down the staircase with a knife in hand, but then she stopped in her tracks. She felt a little tremor, and while it wasn't strong, the surprise almost made her miss one step. She paused for a second, then looked back at Doll. "Did you feel that?" "Feel what?" "That it happened again. This, the tremor." Doll looked at her with an even more annoying face. "Ugh, can you please get a grip? These heroes are so cheap I can deal with them practically alone." Another tremor, a little bit stronger. It made the cup of blood resting on the throne shake a little. Okay?" "Can you listen to me now?" she said, pointing to the blonde cat hero. "All right, just give me a second." Doll tried to divide her attention between the crowd circling Mandalay and Pixie Bob. She focused, but she couldn't feel the pro-hero in her system, aside from a faint presence. "Shoot, my control is almost fading." "Already? Didn't you say you only needed a few drops?" "Yeah, and I controlled everyone to the rooms they had to be in. Can you not blame me for everything that happens for 5 seconds? Maybe if you weren't so stubborn and stupid." "Whatever, just go there and stab them or something." Leech rushed down the stairs, but as she got down, another tremor came, this time enough for her to clearly feel and throw her out of balance. Her eyes landed on the blondie, who still had her eyes closed and her eyebrows furrowed. The punk girl put 2 and 2 together, then went after Pixie Bob to stop whatever she was doing. Seeing this, Mandalay had to change her strategy. She warned Ruko via telepathy, pushing through the crowd, but it was hard to make her way there with everyone trying to dogpile her. Despite her efforts, she couldn't help but hurt the civilians to some extent. She forced her way through, pushing people and scratching some of them with her claws. Hopefully, it would only result in shallow cuts, but she had no other choice. Another tremor, stronger than the previous one, indicated that Pixie Bob was getting there, but she got interrupted when her friend's voice sounded in her mind, telling her to dodge. She narrowly avoided getting a blade shoved in her shoulder. I don't know what is your game, but I know your quirk. You can't use it at distance, so why don't you just give up? You're useless in here, Leech said, pointing the knife at her. I am useless, yet here you are. Isn't it strange? Ruko taunted her, then closed her eyes again. The floor shook once more, but another telepathic signal broke her focus. TCH, that other one is annoying. What is your plan? Shaking the place while your friend gets crushed by the mob. Oh, you would love to know, right? Why don't you read my mind? Leech remained silent for a moment, then dashed for another attack. She wasn't agile enough to deal with those pro-heroes, but she just needed to keep the blondie occupied. Even without controlling her, Doll could still throw the civilians at them. Pixie Bob had to admit, the girl was pretty strong for her apparent age, and the fact she had many knives concealed in her only made things worse. But the critical point was the mind reading that allowed her to predict movements. That way she could easily compensate for the skill gap, at least with them. Ruko doubted it would matter to someone like Maruko. They probably brought Mandalay and her here on purpose. On the other side of the room, Mandalay finally pried herself from the crowd and rushed to help Pixie Bob. Unfortunately, more than a few civilians were left with shallow cuts and bruises, to whom she apologized mentally. The redhead tried to sneak up behind Leech, but the punk girl reacted just in time, presenting a blade that came from the sole of her leather boot. Mandalay barely avoided the stab and made her way next to Pixie Bob, who closed her eyes again. Another tremor. Leech picked a throwing knife from her belt, but then winced for some reason. She looked to the side, then turned to Doll. Doll, move the crowd away, she shouted, then took some distance from it, circling the two heroes. I thought you wanted me to end this quickly, the goth shouted back. Damn it, they got cuts on them, some, at least. And how do I know which ones have? Ah, screw it. Leech pulled a syringe and jabbed her leg, wincing in pain again. Shit, at least this will reduce the noise. The punk girl focused on the two heroes, holding multiple blades between her fingers. She began to circle them, throwing knives and stars at them. Hopefully, the big paws of their costumes allowed Mandalay to block them, but they were still pinned against the wall. She held her fists up as the villain went straight after her, throwing a knife aimed at her head. Mandalay easily blocked it, but her vision was blocked just enough for Leech to get past her, costing the hero a cut on her sides. If it wasn't for her reflexes, it would have been much deeper. Leech followed her path towards Pixie Bob, who opened her eyes just in time to block an attack with her hand, but she failed to stop the blade jutting from the girl's boot. She let out a cry of pain as her leg got stabbed, but at least this gave her a small advantage. Being this close, the blondie could easily overpower the teenager punk. Think again, hero. With a flick of her wrist, Leech had yet another knife in her free hand, aiming for Pixie Bob's chest area. The hero blocked with her other hand, holding the girl back by the wrists as the villain tried to use her weight. Mandalay caught up to them, but in a split second, another concealed blade flashed before her eyes, barely missing. Sensing the attack from behind, Leech kicked Pixie Bob's wound, forcing her to let go of her arms, then flipped over the hero, using the blades in her boots to almost blind the other hero. The villain took some distance to catch her breath. Ha, you two are not as good as I thought. I don't even need to beat you, just make you bleed to your end. Ignoring the taunt, Mandalay stood next to Pixie Bob, helping her to stand up. Is it too serious? It hurts like hell, but I'll survive. What about you? Mandalay formed a pained grin as she felt the cut on her sides. I hope it doesn't leave a mark. I'm planning to go to the beach on our next vacation. she joked, trying to distract them both from the pain. It will be nice, but first we have to deal with them. Is your head still fuzzy? She said, looking at the girl atop the throne. Just a little. And to make things worse, that girl can predict all our moves. Do you still think you can pull it off, Ruko? She looked at her friend's face, seeking confirmation. Her response was a wide, confident grin. Of course, just hold them back a little more. Mandalay nodded, then faced Leech again. Okay, I hope this works. Putting her claws out, the cat hero went after Leech, mentally focusing on her next move. The villain readied her blade for the incoming attack, then swung. Her eyes widened, however, when she realized what the hero had just done. She swung at a space where Mandalay was a second ago, and her reaction time wasn't as good to keep up with this last-second change of plans, earning her a set of cuts along her arm. Leech jumped back, but Mandalay kept coming hot on her tail, diving to the sides and slashing, similar to a cat. In a desperate move, Leech tossed a few blades aimlessly to break her pace so she could safely retreat. Once at a safe distance, she grimaced at the hero. You discovered it, didn't you? Mandalay smirked. How can you read my mind? Yeah, it took me a while, but I figured it out. You didn't make it obvious, but luckily distracting the crowd gave me some time and privacy to think. And the other girl gave the final clue. Cuts. Or any open wound, right? That's one of the reasons for that trap at the entrance, and why the crowd isn't attacking us now, am I right? So what? I can still predict your moves. No matter how faster than me you are, I can always be one step ahead. Leech retorted. Her fist held the knife in her hand tighter. Probably, but I bet it is not perfect. I wasn't sure, but our last exchange confirms it. You have to deal with a lot of noise, don't you? For example, if I think I'm going to hit her with a right punch, but then kick you with my left leg, even if you can read my unconscious decisions, you'll have to deal with a lot of confusing information, right? The brief silence was enough of an answer. You just told me your plan. Do you still think that's going to work? Leech challenged her. Ah, yes, absolutely. Mandalay dashed forward, arms open with bared claws. She jumped and landed a downward kick that missed the mark, but was followed by a flurry of swipes at the punk girl. Leech was struggling to keep up with her pace, having to focus on what were the hero's true intentions. Maybe it was because she was used to communicating telepathically, but it was almost scary how the pro hero could literally think of something while doing something completely different. She could still sense the real move when it came. After all, the brain is sending those signals. But as the hero predicted, she was dealing with a lot of noise in her head. Leech tripped and stumbled back, giving Mandalay an opening. The girl got clawed in the chest, and if it wasn't for the thick leather jacket she had, she would have gained a whole set of diagonal lines over it. The cuts were shallow, as she managed to pull back from the strike. She took distance from the pro hero again, catching her breath. She underestimated the ability of those two. Leech knew she couldn't take Maruko or Rukyu in a fight, but she thought it would be easy to cover the skill gap with her prediction if it was these two. She didn't even expect to fight them head-on, as Doll was supposed to carry this execution by herself. Things were not going according to the script. Glancing around, the villain noticed they were quite distant from the other pro here. She got so focused on the one in front of her, Leech forgot why she engaged to begin with. Tisk, guess I don't have a choice, pulling another injection of the enhancing drug. Leech jabbed her leg again, holding her head in pain for a while. Her eyes watered a little as she tried to focus on the pro heroes. Pulling out another knife, she dashed towards Mandalay, gritting her teeth as she came closer. The pro hero used her new trick, faking a move in her mind while preparing to do another. But as she moved her hand to block an attack from the left, Leech crouched and sprung up, pointing the knife at her throat. She barely missed, but the attack wasn't over. The tables turned, with Leech swiping left and right at Mandalay, who had to thank her years of training and keen reflexes, as she was barely dodging the attacks. This girl, she used another dose of the drug and suddenly there's no noise. Or perhaps all the noise is drowned by a louder sound? This is bad, but it should be time enough, right? Ryuko! Mandalay shouted as she avoided the edge of the knife passing right in front of her eyes. The blondie didn't respond verbally, but she took a deep breath in and slammed her hands on the metal floor, and then the entire room began to shake. Shit, doll, send the mob, Leech shouted back at the goth girl watching from the throne. But what about you? She shouted back. Just stop the other one, quick. Doll hesitated for a moment, but then she sent her troops to attack Pixie Bob. The ground and the walls shook, making it a little difficult for the crowd to walk. Arg, you stupid puppets! The goth girl picked the goblet of blood and took a big sip from it, wiping the remains from her lips with a thumb. At that instant, the crowd went from a wobbly walk to a full sprint. Seeing this, Mandalay got in the way. This could very well end with her being under the feet of those poor people, but she had to hold them as much as possible. Fortunately, she didn't have to go through this. The metal plates underneath her feet began to bulge, and as the sound of metal being bent increased, a flux of dirt spurted from the now increasing cracks, coalescing into a four-legged beast, with the blonde pro-hero resting on top. Are you kidding me? She shouldn't be able to control Earth from that distance, Doll shouted from her throne, jaw agape in disbelief. Don't tell me what I can or can't do, kid, Pixie Bob shouted back. The Earth Golem slowly increased in size, and Mandalay joined her up there. I knew you could do it, Ruko. Now we can attack from a distance and keep the civilians away from harm. Got it. I'll form another one and deal with those troublemakers in no time. Doll was speechless. This definitely wasn't in the script. It should have been a simple thing, an execution with a poetic tone to it. Her moment to shine. So why was it all happening? Where did it go wrong? Unacceptable, unacceptable. She gulped the rest of the goblet's contents, then turned to Leech. Leech, I need their blood. Go there and drain them, she said, tossing a device that looked like a large syringe to the other girl. And how am I supposed to do that? I don't know. Sort it out yourself. You think you can ruin my stage? I'll show you. I'll show everyone not to mess with Doll. Every civilian in the room stopped in their tracks for a moment. Then, in complete sync, they faced the Earth Golem and the two pro-heroes on top of it. Then they began to sprint at it, jumping on the creature and climbing it. Some of them fell, but they kept on climbing, like ants crawling up a large animal. Pixie Bob picked a few of them by controlling the golem, but they kept on coming, under the command of the villain. There are too many people. They'll get hurt if they fall from this height, she said to her partner. Try to keep them at bay. I'm trying, but they're persistent. Then we'll have to duck. Mandalay pushed Pixie Bob down as a sharp object flew above their heads. Leech made her way up, crawling the back of the golem. She held a curved knife in one hand and a large cylinder with a syringe tip on it. The situation was self-explanatory. To make things worse, more civilians were getting there too. Leech and Mandalay exchanged a glance before the attacks came. She couldn't harm the civilians, so she had to fling them out of the golem while trying not to be held down. The problem is she had to be careful so Pixie Bob could catch them. And to make matters even worse, Leech would get in between them to try and jab her with the cylinder. If Doll got a hold of their blood again, they were done for. They knew the effect depended on how much blood she consumed, and it decreased over time. After all, they only felt light dizziness instead of a lack of control. Shino. Mandalay looked back and saw Pixie Bob being held down by a few of them who climbed up the arms of the golem, and that moment of distraction cost her too, as she found herself in the same situation. They surrounded and held her while Mandalay did her best to push them off, resorting to kicks too. Leech swung down with a knife, who the pro-hero caught right on time. The syringe came after, aiming at her neck. She blocked with her other arm, but now they were in a strength contest, with Mandalay against 4 people. The teenage girl gritted her teeth as she used all her might, but then, a moment of weakness. Leech winced, groaning in pain, and stumbled back. Mandalay didn't understand, but looking at her surroundings, she notices some of the civilians had cuts on them from when she pushed through the crowd. This girl had 2 doses of trigger running on her, and her mind reading depended on open cuts to work. With so many people around, what would happen if everyone had cuts? I'm sorry, everyone. This will hurt a little. The pro hero sent a message to everyone, then put her plan into motion. Prying one arm free, Mandalay made a wide swipe, then elbowed another civilian, clawing his back as she released from his grip. Rinse and repeat, she removed them one by one, leaving cuts on their arms as she flung them out of the earth golem. She then moved to help Pixie Bob, removing the pile of people on top of her. She extended her hand and got Pixie Bob back on her feet. Wonderful. Now what? Asked the blondie. Mandalay pointed to the punk girl, now kneeling and holding her head as she cried in pain. Too many voices invaded her mind, and so long as the cuts were open, she couldn't silence them. Now we get the one in control. Having the glare of the 2 pro heroes aimed at her made doll take a step back. This wasn't how this was supposed to go, not at all. The golem advanced, and as she cowered, she stumbled on her throne. Then a desperate idea came to her mind. She refilled the goblet to the brim with blood from the civilians and then pointed at the 2 on top of the earth creature. Stop right there. Do you have any idea what my quirk is capable of? It's not simple mind control. I can move the bodies of my puppets however I want. Like, I can T-twist their necks, or make them break their ankles. Don't test me. This declaration put the 2 heroes on edge, but behind them, Leech looked up at the girl atop the throne. No, you idiot, she whimpered, almost succumbing to the massive headache she was having now. All I have to do is drink this. I'm warning you. Give up and let your lives go, or I'll break all those puppets. Can you live with that in your conscience? While the goth girl challenged them, Mandalay gave an idea to Pixie Bob. Slowly control the earth behind the girl, then force her to drop the goblet. They just had to stave off for a while. The mound of dirt slowly rose behind the throne, taking the form of a large hand. This took some focus from the blondie as she had to act quickly. It was almost there, but then something flew by them. The object in question, a knife, almost got Doll, who jumped out of the way. Surprised, she turned to the heroes but saw Leech in the back pointing out. She turned around and saw the giant arm ready to grab her. The goth girl jumped out of the way again, narrowly avoiding the mass of dirt, and quickly descended the steps, spilling some of the blood in the process. Regardless, there was a considerable amount in there, for the goblet was pretty big. With a defiant look aimed at the pro heroes, Doll flashed a malicious grin. You have made your choice, heroes. Doll swallowed down the red liquid with big gulps. A few droplets escaped by the corners of her mouth, streaking scarlet lines down her cheeks and neck. As the goblet dropped to the floor, the villain stared at the heroes again with a victorious look in her eyes, mouth soaked in red and open in a wide grin. Now, let's begin the joint cracking burp. Her voice weakened as she spoke, and she held her belly as it began to make weird noises. A sick feeling struck her, and her body wobbled around. Then it all came forth and Doll threw up, making a sickening puddle of dark red on the floor. As she coughed it all out, the dizziness began to fade from the heroes' heads. Mandalay and Pix Bob were surprised at this turn of events, but they wouldn't waste such an opportunity. The blondie helped the few civilians who were on the golem, and they quickly checked them for any injuries aside from the ones Mandalay herself has caused. Many of them began to cry and thank the 2 of them, as they finally had control over their own bodies. They also apologized for attacking the heroes, but were told it wasn't their fault in any way. Pixie Bob used the earth golem to tear open the door from where they came, so the civilians could leave this place. With the 2 villains incapacitated, now they had to find the others. Any idea how we can find them, Ruko? Asked the red-haired hero. I might have one. Present. Everyone in the room was pretty surprised by the sudden intrusion. The living landslide bent the metal walls out of shape and poured into the arena. The heroes in training then spotted two familiar faces, Mandalay and Pixie Bob. Without losing much time, the blondie hero saw the young ones and the enemy they were facing. She looked pretty beaten up already, but if she was still up, then she was a tough one. The landslide shifted and swallowed the tall woman, only leaving her head out of the compacted dirt. Weakened as she was, she wouldn't get out of there any time soon. The two pro heroes rushed to meet the young ones, glad that they looked exhausted but otherwise fine. "You guys, where is Fatgum?" Mandalay asked. "We don't know. Fat was taken by another villain after using all his body fat in a fight. But I feel he is fine," Sun Eater answered. "Any sign of the others?" Pixie Bob was next. "We have no idea, but you guys came from a room just like this one, right? The others should be too," Red Riot answered, looking at the huge hole in the wall. "The villain that came after, I think he took Fatgum that way." Real Steel gave the direction. Pixie Bob would handle the rest. A stream of searing hot liquid flashed past his head as he moved around, evading the attacks of the villain. Deku didn't have many problems dodging, but getting close to landing a solid hit was more troublesome. Napalm looked like a complete maniac, but he was a good fighter. Whenever the Emerald Teen got closer, he would use a spread shot of boiling blood, forcing Deku to fall back. Delaware Smash Air Force. The gust of wind hit Napalm head-on, sending the villain tumbling backward, but he got up as quick as he fell, seemingly sustaining no damage. TCH, the quirk enhancer must be helping with a pain, or perhaps he's already used to a lot of pain to begin with. Deku tried to remain focused on the fight and think of a strategy to counter the villain, but his mind kept going back to his friends and the other pro heroes. Rust had a very distorted ideal, and he sounded very determined to see it realized. Not that he doubted them in any way, but it was in his nature to worry about them. After all, one of the villains could control their bodies, and they even held civilians hostage. What began as a small group and a bunch of low-level criminals committing small crimes turned into a villain faction with an ongoing outbreak. To think it all happened after All Might stepped down. No, now is not the time. Focus. On the other side of the room, Nejire-chan faced her enemy, floating in the air and sending waves around her to disperse the sand clouds trying to swarm her. Her opponent sat calmly on a cloud of his own, following the blue net with his eyes. If he was amused or bored, she couldn't tell, for his features were hidden behind those red sashes, but she could feel the intensity of his gaze upon her. She didn't face that many villains head-on before, but she somehow knew for sure this was the gaze of someone ready to murder. The sand clouds began to spin around her, turning into a swirl that got closer and closer. She shot waves at the encroaching sandstorm, but to no avail. She then put her two hands forward. Gring Wave. The energy swirls spiraled forward, blasting the sand away and forming a large, diffuse cloud. Rust kept his eyes on the cloud, searching for the young hero, so much so that he didn't see a fist coming from the left, charged with a glowing spring. Nejire used the sand as a cover to flank him, and as the man hit the floor, the floating sands also fell. However, something else was in her mind, as she felt her stamina depleting. That was a 30% output. I can't be careless, or else I'll be spent. With that in mind, the blue net landed on the floor and went after the villain to knock him out for good. The sooner this was over, the better for them. She powered one fist with an energy spring. This should be enough to knock out someone as big as Hound Dog, just to be sure. But as she went for the final blow, the sands below her feet erupted violently, launching her up in the air. Nejire coughed with the dust and sand that got into her mouth and eyes, but at least she managed to stabilize herself in the air. When she looked down, the young hero noticed Rust gazing at her again, holding an empty syringe of trigger. Fool. The sands erupted again, converging on her. Nejire moved away as the sands collided right where she was. The floating mass pursued her around, much faster than before, and in larger quantities too. She dodged a few of them and dispersed others with her waves, but one tendril got through and swatted her down. Nejire used another wave to cushion the impact, but she still landed on HT metal floor with a thud. As she got up, she naturally brought one hand to her left side, where she got hit and winced at the touch. Her suit got scrapped away and her skin was reddened and bruised as if something coarse had rubbed the area. "It hurts, doesn't it?" the villain spoke, slowly approaching her in his cloud. Sand is a good medium to clean encrusted surfaces. With a strong blow of compressed air, it can remove all impurities from it. Sure, it leaves the surface a little abrased, but that can be solved later. Do you understand, young hero? Mounds of sand rose from behind him, much bigger than before, forming spikes aimed at her. Nejire's eyes widened in surprise. At that distance she wouldn't make it out by dodging or running. The stream of sand came forth violently, and she responded with all her might. Gring flood. The energy waves sprung forward as she used her max strength, countering the sandblast. Dust flew everywhere, but Rust kept the stream going, forcing Nejire to spend even more of her stamina holding back. Drawing every last bit she could, the brunette gave an extra push to her attack, doubling the size of the springs and completely reverting the sandblast on its course. As the dust settled, Nejire stood up as the winner of this dispute, breathing heavily, hands still in attack position. She won, but she definitely overdid it. "Sorry, Deku. I'll have to keep on support from now on." "How?" The dust settled completely, and all across the room, a sphere of sand broke down, revealing an unharmed Rust, who carried himself on a moving dune as her got closer. "What an impressive power. Splendid. It's a shame you don't have what it takes to use it to the full extent. If you did," he moved a finger, and a clump of sand flew forward, hitting Nejire in the stomach, then wrapping around her waist and dragging her to the villain. "You would have used it to kill me." Behind the mask, his eyes looked down at her with disgust, and more sand began to coalesce around her body, from her feet, going to her legs and further up. The more sand gathered around, the more pressure she felt around her body. "This is the path you chose, young child, and this will be your grave," he said, patting her head as the sand reached her shoulders. "And who decided that?" Nejire was struggling to move due to her last move exhausting her, but she wasn't completely out of juice. Moving after this would be quite difficult, but now she had a clear shot at him. The energy swirled around her wrists, expanding the sand tomb around her. The next moment, everything blew up in the air, including Rust, who didn't expect the young girl to still be able to use her quirk. "You dare oppose me, you insolent fool?" he shouted, enraged. "Of course, defeating the bad guys is what heroes do," Nejire said, holding her fists up, although she felt her arms heavy to lift. She was probably on her last vital reserves. Using too much would end with her at the hospital, and possibly in a coma, but there was no other choice. "Tamaki-kun, Mirio-kun, I can't do any less than they would, right?" Her heart was in the right place, but Nejire's body wasn't following. She hoped she could at least enhance her punches, as Rust wasn't particularly strong or anything. The problem was getting across all that sand. "Sigh, I have to find a way, don't I?" She tried her best to hold a grin as she went to the attack, but it didn't play out as she imagined in her head. Her movements were more sluggish than she thought, making it all too easy for Rust to avoid them. He didn't even need his quirk. Foolishness, complete foolishness. What do you plan to accomplish like that? Do you think that by simply refusing to stand down and accept defeat you'll bring hope to people? That's not how this works. In this world, victory must be overwhelming and absolute. Og. A large clump of sand smashed on top of her. Then, Rust lifted Nejire, holding her in place with open arms as the sand compressed around her wrists. She could barely hold her head up due to her exhaustion, but Rust lifted her chin with one hand. "Look, young hero," he said, directing her gaze to the other fight in the large room. "This is what an overwhelming power looks like. He might be corrupted, but perhaps there is salvation for him, and you could play a part in this. He then moved his other hand behind her, pressing it on her bruised skin. Nejair cried in pain, catching the attention of both Napalm and Deku. The latter suddenly stopped moving, his eyes wide open as he saw Nejair being held hostage. "Ha! What a change of pace, right? I guess you don't have any other options now, kiddo." Napalm taunted him, but Deku didn't quite register. His mind was still focused on the blue net in pain. "I'll give you one more chance, Deku. Join our cause, and I might spare this poor fool, for now." His fists tightened and began to shake. "She was never a true hero. None of those imposters at UA are. They're nothing but false idols, usurpers. I understand that you have been raised by this foul society, but I can help you, Deku. My eyes have been opened when I saw Stain. Let me help you see, too." Green sparks began to flow as the emerald teen emitted a brighter glow. He's getting angry," Napalm smirked, but then pointed his arm cannon at the blue net and his partner. "Give up, Rust. This kid won't listen to your ramblings. We both knew none of them would. They're all trash. So, why don't I start taking it out?" Deku's head snapped back towards Napalm, and for a split second the villain felt a killing intent coming from the green-haired kid. But their attention was dragged elsewhere again. The ceiling opened, and out came an elderly man hooked up to a lot of machines. "Pestilence? What are you doing here? You should be dealing with." "Idiot. Look at the other rooms," the old man said, prompting Rust to look at the phone in his pocket. Needless to say, he was surprised and displeased with what he saw, to say the least. "Those incompetent fools, I should have known. Where are the pro-heroes? I have lost sight of them, caught, but they should be dead by now. Unbelievable. Change of plans. Prepare to gas everything." He saw it from the corner of his eyes, a blink of light. Napalm was fighting all the way across the large room, so by no means it should be possible for the kid to cover that distance so fast. Yet, here he is. Rust jumped back and brought a sand wall from the floor. If it wasn't for the enhancement he currently had, he would have missed and been hit by this dangerous punch. Deku skidded to a halt, his eyes focused on the villain. He then made a pull motion with his left arm, and then Rust noticed the pitch-black tendril wrapped around Nejair. Again, before he could react, she was pulled from the sand prison and landed in his arms. "Senpai? Nejair-senpai, are you okay?" "Humu, just exhausted, it's all," she replied weakly. Thank God," he sighed in relief, then looked back at the villains in front of them. Weird. Just a moment ago, Deku had a completely different look on his face, but now he looks so worried about me, it's kinda. Nejair was struggling to remain awake, but her conscience was slowly slipping. Meanwhile, Rust was still a little in shock. That brat, even if he was chosen by Stain, such power, I thought Pestilence would have dealt with the biggest threats, but I didn't imagine he would be so strong. Were our readings incorrect? "Napalm, take over here and dispatch them, quickly." "Got it," said the maniac, injecting another dose of the quirk enhancer. But as he ran towards the two heroes in training, the ceiling of the room began to bend and break. What now? First came a large claw, then another, and finally a giant winged lizard fell from the ceiling, followed by another person. "Ryukyu!" Deku picked Nejair up again and dashed next to her, meeting the dragon hero along with a dizzy Maruko. "Ryukyu, Maruko, what happened?" She thought it would be a good idea to transform inside that small shaft," said the rabbit hero, pointing at the open hole. "It was the fastest way to get down." Ryukyu followed. "You two look sick. Is it because of that other villain?" he asked, looking at the old man up at the ceiling. "Yeah, he did a number on us, but I can still fight." Ryukyu not so much, but, "Oi, what happened to her?" As she got up, Maruko noticed the blue net resting in his arms. "Nejair spent all her energy in the fight and got hurt because the words died in his mouth." There was that feeling again, that sentiment of always being one step behind. On the other side, Napalm got closer, cannon pointed at them. Rust flew up in a sand cloud as he left the room. It's a shame you didn't hear me, Deku. You could have been different. You could have been a true beacon of hope, the next symbol of peace. But you'll perish here along with all that scourge, those false heroes who only seek money, glory, and fame. False idols, wanting to exact their flawed justice on others, fooling the masses with fake promises they can't fulfill. But worry not, this is only the beginning. We shall hemorrhage all the impurities from this corrupt society, and a new era of heroes will emerge. Shut up! His voice alone boomed in the room, silencing the villain's speech. Everyone stood still. The glow emitting from his body intensified, shards of lighting crackled around his body, and his emerald eyes burned with anger. I've heard enough. Deku quite literally blinked away from their vision, reappearing in the air behind Rust. St. Louis smash. Once again, if it wasn't for the enhancing drugs, Rust would have been hit with full force. He managed to create a barrier behind him, but the sheer air pressure of the kick sent him flying. Impossible. This kid shouldn't be that powerful. Deku landed on the floor, immediately dashing forward like a lightning bolt. You keep talking and talking about corruption and fake heroes. Once Rust recovered his balance, Deku was already getting on his face again, swinging another roundhouse kick that struck a sand shell. He landed on the wall, then jumped off, charging a punch that Rust avoided, but the air pressure undid the sand cloud, forcing him down to the floor. As if you knew anything about being a hero. I know everything there is to know. They're illegitimate, corrupt, a blight on our society. Rust jabbed himself with another injection, and then a large sand wave formed behind him, advancing towards Deku. The green teen jumped on the awl, taking extra impulse to hit the villain as the moving dune crashed where he was. He missed the kick, but course-corrected by using Black Whip to grip on the ceiling. He reeled in, acting like a slingshot, and this time Deku landed a solid hit on Rust's face, breaking through the sand shell and knocking him down the large dune. They crashed into the sand, with Deku holding firmly to the sash wrapped around his face, the other hand closed into a fist and hanging above his head. What do you know? Everything you said is just blank accusations. I know the true nature of heroes, of people. All it takes is being born with the wrong quirk, and you'll be ignored. These words froze Deku in place for a second, but it was all Rust needed. You'll be the villain. Deku got spiked into the air by a sand spurt. The sand tore his costume around the abdomen, and he got a few bruises like Nejire, but otherwise, he was fine. He even landed on his feet. He spun around to go after Rust again, but he was met by a stream of boiling blood, which he dodged by a few millimeters. Our fight isn't over yet, kiddo. Napalm held a psychotic grin. But I get it. Rust also gets on my nerves. This whole ideology of his, the truth is I think it's bullshit. People like me and that muscle for brains, we just want to have fun. And killing heroes is just the best. He injected another dose and began to blast Deku with searing hot streams of the scarlet liquid. A few got too close to his face and the teen could feel the heat almost burning his skin. If he got hit with a single one of those, it would most likely be over for Deku. Napalm kept firing at the green lightning bolt, laughing like a maniac as his appearance changed. His skin became reddened and began to release steam, as the air around him warped with the heat. Any metal that his weaponized blood touched got a faint orange glow too. This forced Deku to take more distance, but the moment Miruko and Rukyu entered his peripheral vision he stopped, countering the last shot at him with a compressed gust of wind. This was the limit line for him. Going further back would put them at risk. And to make things worse, Rust was escaping along with that old man, whose quirk he didn't see yet. I got too heated there. Focus, Deku. How do I get us all out of this? His eyes darted between the villains and the debilitated heroes on his back, trying to find a solution. He could face Napalm head-on, but then Rust would leave and cause more havoc later on. He could go after the leader, but then what about the others? No, saving them is the priority, and to do so What are you waiting for, Deku? He broke out of his thoughts as he heard his name being called. Turning around, the Emerald teen saw Maruko standing up, breathing with some difficulty, but on her feet. I can take on those idiots up there, so what are you waiting for? She grinned, winked at him, and didn't elaborate further, running towards the man on the sand cloud. That left him to deal with the human furnace across the room. Meanwhile, Maruko jumped up high, taking impulse on the wall. Hello again, idiot, she greeted the masked villain with a spinning kick that was blocked by the sand shell. You fool, that child showed much greater power than you, and he couldn't stop me. Do you think you can stand in my way with that weakened? Can't you shut up for a whole minute? I hate villain banter. Dismissing the next long speech, Maruko bounced off the wall and assaulted Rust with more kicks, breaking the sand shell and forcing him to at least back off a little, but he wasn't completely wrong. Thanks to the old man, she felt out of breath and all that fighting was helping, but Maruko had to do something. Standing still was the least favorite of her things to do. This is annoying. The sand feels solid on impact, but then it dissolves and tries to get my feet stuck. This dude is a pain in the ass to fight, but at this stage, he's my best match. I know I'm slower, so dealing with the other hothead would be... She didn't spend less energy imagining the disastrous results and kept forcing Rust back while avoiding the living sandstorm swirling around her. As the heroes fought, the geezer watched from afar in his protected cradle. The sound of medical machines drowned out some of the external noise. Then, a digital blip signaled the procedure was completed. His cursed sick blood has filled another tank of the hideous machine responsible for turning it into the deadly mist. His trembling finger hovered over the release button, but before that, he gave a short hint to his partners. Rust, cough cough, you would be wise to leave this room. The moment he heard that the masked man pulled back, forcing Maruko to stop her attacks, she rested on the glass dome protecting the old man, waiting for the enemy's next move. What? Tired already? She taunted him with a grin. Your short sight will be your death, hero. I need not best you in a test of brute force. Her ears twitched, catching a familiar sound. Looking down, she saw the mist being released again, and right after that the glass dome opened up. But she was met with a puff of the toxic gas right in the face. It was faint, but enough to send her into a coughing fit as her eyes watered and her throat closed. Pestilence had no trouble using any dirty tricks. Maruko tried to get away from the source, but she felt something ensnaring her wrists and ankles, then dragging her around. Rust captured and suspended her in the air, right in front of him. See? Your kind is ashamed to the title hero. With your super moves and your bravado, nothing but overpaid actors. You'll be the last to perish, and you'll watch as all your friends die along with your hopes, just like the hopes of people like me died in the shadows. The difference is that everyone will see this. Rust turned her around so she could see the mist slowly crossing towards an injured Rukyu and unconscious Nejire. While Deku fought against Napalm, the teen was doing the best he could, but it was like trying to punch a furnace, one that was also shooting at you with scalding hot liquids. His air force worked to push Napalm back, but the maniac was probably pumped full of trigger, suppressing the pain with the high. I'll get rid of Napalm and Blood Frenzy when their usefulness end. We don't need types like them in the new society. You know, you may look down upon them, but you're not so different after all. Are you sleeping? He did a double take, surprised above anything else that the pro hero he constrained fell asleep, during a fight nonetheless. But then her head perked up and she faked a yawn, followed by some coughing. Sorry, did you say something? I was so boring I dozed off. There it was, her creaky, defiant grin and fiery red eyes. As expected, this smug attitude infuriated Rust. Do you not know when to take things seriously? He said, enraged and further surrounding her body with sand, forming a floating sand tomb. I could crush all your bones right now. Yeah, but you already said you will kill me last, so I don't have to worry yet. Besides, her rabbit ears twitched, for they could hear the faint noises coming from the other side of the metal wall. I think you have bigger problems to deal with. Much bigger problems. Before he could even try and make sense of her words, the sound of something being crushed and metal bending filled the room. Right after, a large dent appeared in the room's wall, followed by a giant fist made of dirt and concrete. The fist pushed further, opening a larger opening as it became a landslide and invaded the arena. On top of it rested the two cat heroes, accompanied by the hardening duo, the third member of the Big Three, and the BMI hero, currently leaning on his young apprentice for support. Impossible. She should not be able to use her quirk here. Impossible? I don't even know that word, and neither do they, said Maruko. Rust turned around again to deal with the rabbit hero, but another surprise came to him. A gust of wind pushed the mist up in his direction, and in a moment of distraction, he let Maruko go to shield himself. Down on the floor, Rukyu flapped her wings with her remaining strength, hoping to cause a distraction so the white-haired hero could escape. As she landed on the floor, Maruko rushed to the other heroes. The old man up there, take him down, now, but don't get close. With a simple nod, Pixie Bob formed a giant golem. The earth creature's hands stretched up, grabbing the platform where Pestilence was, tearing it from the hinges and tracks and sending it to the floor. Now stay away from him. That mist is cough cough toxic cough, she said as she got to her knees, unable to get much air in her lungs. Toxic mist? Got it, Real Steel said as he ran to the fallen mechanical cradle. Wait, bro, you're exhausted. Red Riot held his shoulder, but Tetsu assured him with a thumbs up and a toothy grin. I can't fight another crazy villain like that woman, but I can take care of a dude stuck in a pod. He quickly made his way to the source of mist, holding his breath and making an extra effort to maintain his steel form. He sunk his hands under the damaged dome, prying it open. From the toxic cloud and smoke from the failing machines, he pulled the old man from his cradle, tossing him to the side. One last threat to worry about. From his spot above the fight, Rust watched incredulously as his plan crumbled in front of his eyes. Unacceptable. He gripped the last 3 injections of trigger he had with him. Unacceptable. The heroes reacted as expected when listening to someone shouting out of nowhere. As they looked up at the source, more holes in the walls opened, pouring sand into the room, and as it piled on the floor, Rust hovered above it, with his arm held forward. A red liquid poured from his hand and into the sand, and it was like it gained life, swirling around the villain into a greater sandstorm. Getting to this point is, frankly, unacceptable. But if I have to bury you all down by myself, so be it. Prepare, heroes. These sands will be your tombs. With the move of a hand, a large mass of sand moved in their direction. It crashed against Pixie Bob's earth golem, spraying around and reforming into a large tendril. Rust kept attacking the heroes like this, sending strike after strike at them. Luckily, the earth creature was made of more solid material, but it also meant it moved slower. Plus, the sandstorm raged around him, acting like a barrier. More sand pours into the room by the minute, increasing the villain's attack and defense power. The sand struck the heroes down relentlessly, and they would probably be buried alive by now if it wasn't for Pixie Bob pushing back. Damn it, when did this guy get so strong? She complained, doing her best to stop the sandblasts. It's the enhancing drug. It has to wear off at some point, Mandalay said. We'll be 6 feet under sand by then. Cough, what's the plan? Maruko asked, still unable to get on her feet. We're too spent to fight directly, and we can't reach him up there, Red Riot said as he helped Real Steel to stand up. The same could be said about Sun Eater and Fatgum. If I had more access to dirt, I could take him on, but this would risk collapsing the whole thing. It's a miracle that the other room is still there, said the blondie, controlling the creature around. I have a suggestion. The extra voice came from behind, catching the attention of the heroes, who immediately got up on guard. Out of the large hole in the wall stepped Doll, carrying a dizzy leech with one arm around her shoulders. Mandalay jumped to the attack, but the goth girl shouted, putting one hand up in defense. "Wait, wait, wait! We came in peace." The red-haired woman hesitated, but still held her claws out. Her eyes focused on the girl with a fierce gaze. "Are you betraying him?" she asked cautiously. "Betrayal? Yeah, whatever. Look, this is not what I signed up for, okay?" she said, sounding and looking very uneasy. Then she pulled out a phone showing some text. "Plus, Rust would gas Leech and me along with everyone. He didn't even bother hiding the message after we got defeated." Mandalay pondered over it for a moment, but the strong impact of another sandblast and her friend asking her to hurry up pushed the pro-hero to make up her mind. "Do you know how to stop him?" she asked the goth girl. "Just give me a minute, my stomach still hurts." Doll then picked a small vial with a red liquid inside. There was a label with the name Rust on it. "Let's see who's gonna get rid of who now, you freaky cultist," she said, drinking the liquid. She held one hand in front of her mouth, as she still felt sick in the stomach, but Doll subdued the urge to throw up again, taking a deep breath and slowly releasing it. Then the attack ceased. Is that it?" asked the blondie, but as she looked up from the cover, she noticed the sandstorm surrounding Rust was still up. "Didn't you say you could stop him?" She turned to the goth girl. "I never said such a thing. Rust is pumped full of trigger if he's controlling that much sand, but the good news is he loses his fine control, so he needs to wave his arms or something. Right now I'm keeping his body rigid, but he's good with his quirk. He can move anything touching his blood with his mind." "So that's how it works. But why sand?" asked Fatcom. "I don't know. Something about equal mass or something. But the point is that with the enhancers, his control radius gets really huge, but he loses accuracy. I'll keep him frozen as much as I can, but I would suggest you heroes stop him now. Where's that blue-haired girl, or the green boy?" Doll said that almost casually, but this reminded them of the other fight taking place. She followed their collective gazes, and her eyes widened upon seeing it herself. "Oh, he's so screwed." This whole time Deku focused mainly on two things, pushing Napalm back and avoiding the deadly projectiles. This villain literally used his blood as ammunition, so at some point he would have to stop, right? Well, judging by all the warm metal around him, he was wrong, and by a fair margin. In no way should a human being have so much blood in them. Just what was wrong with this guy? Napalm kept laughing like he was having the greatest time target practicing with the young hero. His skin was now a deep red, and the air around him shimmered with heat. The two of them were still aware of their surroundings, but none could spare more than a second looking elsewhere, for it would give the other an opening. "Come on, get close and personal, kid. I'm gonna peel away the skin and flesh from your bones. Ha 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 ha," he shouted, firing at the fast-moving teen. "I can't get too close without getting burned, and my Air Force attacks don't have any effect anymore," he thought while evading the attacks. Even at this distance, Napalm was shooting with a scary accuracy, which made him wonder just how much time he practiced while in that state. "Think, Izuku, think. How can I cover that much ground that fast? It will have to be a decisive strike too, but without hurting myself. I can't use Black Whip that freely yet. What else can I do?" As he looked for a strategy, Napalm kept laughing his head out like the crazy man he was. "Ha ha 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 ha. I gotta admit, it's hella fun to play with you, kid. But you know, once I get you, I'll burn a hole through your guts. The heat will cauterize the wound, so you'll survive long enough. Then, ha 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 ha, I'm gonna get that pretty face with the blue hair and make a hell of a mess. Talking about leaving only the skull, you know? I'll blast all the scales off that fat lizard and give that bunny girl the tan of her life. To hell with that hero shit, and the villain shit too. I just like to melt people's skin, so if that makes me a villain, whatever. Ha 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 ha." As he spoke, Napalm began to walk towards the other heroes, still shooting around him. His direction, the fallen dragon hero, and her apprentice. Those things I said when we first met were just a script. Taking out the fakers, changing society. F society. This world is boring as hell, and I want to melt it all the way down while having the loudest laugh. Why? Because I can. Ha 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 ha. Screw the hero fame. Screw the toys, the super moves, and that hope bullshit. Killing heroes is the best thing, and I love it. Deku skidded to a halt, standing in the way between Napalm and the two resting heroes. Hee, are you going to be their meat shield, kid? I'm going to protect them, Deku said with confidence. Ha 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 ha, and how are you going to do that? With some new super move? Give me your best, kid, I'll cook you alive. Napalm taunted him, pointing both cannons forward. Are you sure, Izuku? Nana's voice sounded inside his head, worried about the idea that just came to the boy's mind. I just need one shot, and it will be over, he assured his mentor's mentor. Yes, but you never tried this before. You just saw it a few times on TV. I already tried what I know, and it didn't work, so I have to try something new, he said, charging up the energy of one for all coursing through his body, mainly his legs. He crouched down, with one hand resting on the floor in front of him. 20%. Let's go. Deku blasted forward, going straight towards Napalm. Ha 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 ha. You have guts, kid, I'll admit. A straight line? Really? Napalm didn't hesitate and fired his cannons at Deku. The emerald teen dove to the floor, sinking his feet on the metal. His posture was much similar to the one the rabbit hero used. Manchester. Jumping forward, Deku covered the rest of the distance, but even then it was large enough that Napalm could avoid it. As he flipped in the air, Deku brought his leg down in an axe kick. Smash. Just being near Napalm in this state made him feel like his skin was burning, and the villain aimed his cannons at him again, almost at point blank. Deku jumped forward right on time to evade, lifting the panels in the process. Napalm followed with his aim and spotted Deku up in the air, which meant he couldn't change his trajectory, or so he thought. When evading the last attack, the villain didn't notice a thin black tendril wrapping around his wrist, where the arm cannons connected to the feeding tubes plugged into his arms. Deku wasn't that precise with Black Whip yet, but at this short distance, he wouldn't miss, just like when he trained with Maruko. Focus on doing one thing, then on doing two things, and soon enough both will naturally feel like one single action. Upon noticing this, the villain's eyes widened. You son of a... Deku reeled in the tendril, snapping the tube and cutting the connection. Blood spilled down, letting a lot of steam as it hit the floor. But he wasn't done yet. Using another tendril, he quickly pulled himself to the floor, taking the rabbit pose again. He dashed forward. Napalm was still dazed by the last trick pulled on him. The sudden drop in blood pressure made him dizzy and confused, but he still could aim with his other arm. The young hero was coming at him again in a straight line, so this time he would use the maximum output. The cannon built up pressure to the limit, and at that distance, there was no way he would dodge, right? 30%. He was wrong. Deku jumped at the last moment, vaulting over the jet of scalding blood. His legs were wrapped in black tendrils to shield them from the extreme hit. He wasn't sure it would work, but it was better than anything. His legs locked around Napalm's neck, and he twisted his body in the air. Keeping his momentum, Deku planted his hands on the floor and used all the force in his legs to pull the villain along in an arc move, crashing his head on the metal floor. Kansas smash. Napalm hit the floor, kicked up, and flipped in the air again, landing on his back, his face covered in blood, although it was hard to tell the steamy red liquid from his red-hot skin. Regardless, the rolled-up pupils were a good sign he was knocked out, at least for now. Meanwhile, Deku sat on the floor, gritting his teeth in pain as he felt his legs burning. The Black Whip helped to avoid major damage, but the direct contact, as brief as it was, left him with a few light burns. The inwards of his costume's pants were partially gone too. By far, not the worst pain he ever felt, but still an unpleasant experience. Shaking his head and ignoring that, he quickly got up, carefully getting closer to the fallen villain, checking if he would get up again. By the looks of it, he wouldn't, so there was one last threat to deal with, the massive sandstorm raging. Over there, Doll struggled to keep control of the other villain. Meanwhile, Health Pack, who had been carried along by Sun Eater, sat next to Leech, who held her close like they were sisters or something. The heroes didn't remove their eyes from them for a single second, of course. Pixie Bob tried a few times to break through the barrier, but it spun so fast it simply disintegrated the dirt like wood into sandpaper. The goth girl held her belly with a discomforted face. Shit, the control is wearing off. I drank too much blood. What happens then? Mandalay asked. What do you think? We're dead. He'll be pissed at us for failing the script, and he'll be pissed at me for stabbing him in the back. Ugh, this is bullshit. All I wanted was to have some friends as normal kids do, she complained, sitting next to Leech. These are not the kinds of friends you want to have, Fatcom said from where he was sitting and resting. I know that. I'm not an idiot, but one bad quirk is all it takes. Everyone thinks you're a freak, and when you try to show how cool it actually is, Doll recoiled in her place and hugged her knees, looking down at the floor. This picked up Mandalay's attention. So this is why you joined this crazy cult. Yeah, why else would a girl like me join? A promise of a world where your quirk is not one of the villain ones. Oh, and that false idol stuff is gone too. I didn't buy everything Russ said, but he did make a point. Heroes like you don't come to save little girls like me. Or Leech here, she said, nudging the punk girl next to her. They exchanged looks a few times, and after rolling her eyes, Leech also began to share. I can hear everyone's thoughts, but it is not voluntary. You can imagine where this ends. One small cut, one minor bruise, and they become an open book. I learned very quickly that people have inner demons, and they don't like when you talk about it. There was a moment of silence among them. Then there's Health Pack here. She was literally dragged into this mess. Her parents got into debt and they were about to eat dirt. But then someone discovered her blood can cure practically any disease, heal wounds, and give you energy. I'll let you guess what happened then. I don't know how Rust and Pestilence got their hands on her, but she has been hooked on weak-enhancing drugs almost 247 to increase her blood replenishing. Sigh, we're all a bunch of F-ups, but it's not like we didn't have our reasons. The last bit got Kirishima fired up. You call this a reason? That other woman almost killed her. TCH, doesn't surprise me. Frenzy has all the screws loose. Not everyone can be at a top high school hero course, you know, she said nonchalantly, patting HP's head. Kirishima was about to talk back at her, but he was cut by the heavy coughing of Maruko, who then fell to the floor. She was beginning to suffocate. Shit, did she inhale Pestilence's mist? Leech said, getting next to her. Sun Eater was about to restrain the girl, but Fatcom prevented him. Looking around, she signaled HP to come closer, then pulled out a small curved knife. The other heroes immediately jumped at her, but she held her hands up in defense. Hey, wait, I'm trying to help. HP needs to taste the blood for it to work, she explained, then slowly approached Maruko again, taking her hand and making a small cut on her thumb to draw a few droplets of blood. The little girl picked some with her finger, then tasted it and offered the straw, handing it from her arm to the rabbit hero. Maruko pulled away at first, but Leech forced the thing into her mouth. Just suck it already, or do you want to die? She hesitated, but Maruko gave in and took in a sip of the scarlet liquid. To her surprise, it tasted like ramen noodles. Soon after, her lungs began to function again. Her throat opened, and she could feel all the illness symptoms go away as a warm feeling took over her body. They took a few other sips, and she was as good as new, with all the muscular fatigue gone. As she sat up, she thanked the small girl, who then looked across the room. Her eyes were on the dragon hero. Right, Rukyu, Can you help her too? She asked the little girl, who timidly looked at Leech, asking for permission. The punk girl nodded and off the girl went, with the small knife in hand. I hope you understand this doesn't change your situation. You still committed lots of crimes, Mandalay said in a stern, yet comprehensive tone. We know. We don't expect you guys to leave us just go. As she said that, the loud sound of something hitting the metal floor caught their attention. It seems the other fight was over. No way. Did that kid defeat Napalm? And we were supposed to recruit him? Doll said, baffled at the sight. Don't underestimate him, you'll regret it, Maruko said, getting up and stretching her legs again. How are things going, Pixie? Nothing new, this guy sure is stubborn. Pixie Bob said back, not moving her eyes from the sandstorm. She had to be ready for any openings. Hey, Lolita girl, when your control is over, tell me. I'll jump there and kick this dude's ass. I think it won't be necessary, Fatgum told her, also looking at the giant ball of sand. It will probably be over soon. Trigger gives you a massive boost, but the drawback is also pretty intense, especially when used like this. At any time, this guy will collapse. Well, I hope you're right. I can't stop his arms anymore, Doll warned them. The barrier began to wave. The sandstorm slowly dissolved and revealed the villain floating in the middle. He probably spotted the two girls among the heroes, but he didn't seem surprised. Instead, he simply raised his hands, and with it, two giant dunes formed, directed at them. Pixie Bob moved the earth golem to shield them, but she wasn't sure she could block an attack this big. From her position, Maruko was just waiting for the moment to jump and attack. Too soon, and he would snare her again. Then it came. The dunes moved forward, but then... Texas smash. The punch broke through the newly formed shell, pushing Rust back. Deku jumped back, hooking him with the black whip. But before he could even reel in to deck him in the face, the villain hauled in pain, crutching his sides, and fell. The menacing sands followed suit, and at least they worked to cushion the fall. Confused, Deku kept the black tendril around him, but the only movement Rust was doing right now was rolling from side to side, writhing in pain. Everything has a price, and this is the one for too many quirk enhancers, Fatgum said as the teams of heroes slowly regrouped. Maruko-san, we have to get you medical treatment quickly, and for Nejire-chan too. That was the first thing Deku said upon seeing her again. Don't worry, I'm fine. That little girl helped a lot, she said, pointing at the girl in an oversized hoodie, who was done tending to Rukiyu and was now taking care of the Bluenet. Wait, isn't she one of them? She's probably the only innocent in all this, Deku, said Leech, who now had his attention. And you too? Let's say we met the wrong people at the wrong time. Once again, this doesn't excuse you from what you did. At least 100 civilians were at risk. Mandalay told them again in her stern motherly tone. Oh, that whole neck-breaking thing? I was totally bluffing. I can't control people like that. Doll joined the conversation, getting a few mean looks from the two cat heroes. So, what happens now? I'm kinda new to this villain versus hero thing. We'll get out of here and get you all arrested. It's not that complicated. That was Rukiyu, in her dragon form, joining them. Nejire was behind, taking wobbly steps as she rubbed her tired eyes. HP rushed back to under Leech's arm, tugging at her jacket. Well crap, I should have expected. Yukiyu-san, what about the girl? Sun Eater said, looking at her with a concerned face. We'll try to locate her parents or close family, and then return her. If not possible, well, we'll sort things out. This case unfolded into something we didn't anticipate. Everyone agreed on this. For a crazy blood cult formed after the ideologies of the hero killer, they were very well equipped with quirk enhancers, support gear, and the subterranean rooms too. This was by far too much for a group like this, so there must be something else behind this entire thing. Perhaps something they didn't notice because the situation escalated and they failed to notice. Well, they could check this later when revising the case, or better yet, let Centipter and the police handle it, as this was exactly their specialty. For now, their mission was complete. That is what they wanted to say, but there was yet another development to take place. "Oh, my head!" Mikuro began to wobble, as if she was hit with sudden dizziness. "Maruko-san, is everything all right?" Deku asked her, giving her a hand to stand up. "Yeah, I am. I just feel a weird numbness." She turned around, but it was already late. Before they knew it, they got hit with a wide swipe from Ryukyu's tail, sending them flying back a few meters. Given their experience, it was clear what just happened, but the dragon hero's struggling face and the three villains fleeing the scene could also give a few hints. "Sorry guys, you seem like cool heroes for once, but little me can't go to prison. Places to see, people to meet. Just so you know, my control wears off when the blood gets out of my system. No worries, I'll probably puke again soon, so bye-bye," Doll said, waving at the heroes. With half of them exhausted from the fights, Maruko out of the game, and Ryukyu being controlled, only Mandalay and Deku were up to fight, but they would rather not hurt the dragon hero again. "Well, I lied. HP doesn't need to taste your blood. I just said that so I could get some and give it to Doll," Leech said, picking up HP in her arms. To be honest, the primary effect of her quirk is that her blood tastes like whatever she ate in the last 4 hours. I only had ramen noodles to feed her, so, as I said, she's innocent. Anyway, we'll try and stay away from trouble, if that's worth anything. HP then leaned in and whispered something in her ear. She asked to say, "Thank you for saving us. Ah, and before I forget, you two, the dragon one and the rabbit one. You two have some serious problems in the head. He's my age, you know that? Stupid enhancer." And with that the three girls left, going back to the hole Pixie Bob opened in the wall while Ryukyu blocked the path. It took about 5 minutes before the effect wore off and they could leave the destroyed arena. As they came out from the underground, carrying the remaining villains, the police arrived with the transports to send them to Tartarus. All across the neighboring districts, the rioting thugs were being captured and sent to lower security prisons, which wasn't a simple task. In matters of sheer numbers, the police department would be occupied for a good while. Upon further investigation of the building, they discovered a large transmitter that was responsible for interfering with normal broadcasting and replace it with a live stream of the events that occurred there. It was meant to be a public execution and an exposition of the corruption of heroes, according to their manifesto, and perhaps it worked to some extent, as many citizens complained about how the heroes took too long to get things under control. Many suffered a considerable amount of property damage. But on the other hand, many people were watching and rooting for the heroes to win against those crazy villains. Some even gained fans without knowing. For example, there was already footage of the fights in a blog, talking about the next big hero team, comprised of Sun Eater and the hardening duo. A certain green-haired mother almost had a heart attack when she saw her precious little baby being recruited by some weird cult. But she was also very proud to see him fight and win, without breaking any bones. With the mission officially over, the teams were disbanded and the pro-heroes returned to their agencies, with their respective interns after them. It was a night full of action. Many heroes were still around the city locking up criminals and putting out fires, but the two pro-heroes were feeling pretty fine, thanks to HP's help. Not only that, even Deku got rid of his faint burns. The group of villains left one last vial with HP's blood behind, with his name on it. Nejire was spent and dropped on the bed next to Ryukyu's office room upon arrival. Tatsuma put a blanket over the poor brunette, then headed out. She crossed rooms looking at her smartphone, checking the messages. It seems the chaos has been subdued, but the police are still working with the heroes around the city. You could stay here overnight and rest more. There's a shower over there, and I keep a bed around for this kind of occasion," said the blondie, pointing the direction to the bathroom. "This sounds like a routine of yours, Ryukyu-san," Midoriya commented. "It wouldn't be the first time I'm stuck at work. Sometimes I spend weeks without going back home. As they say, our work is never over. She showed him a slightly tired but warm smile. The Emerald Child was no stranger to overwork and the potential harms it could bring on a person. But who was he to question a pro hero, right? As he considered taking a shower, another person joined them, exiting the bathroom with an oversized plain gray hoodie. She dried her white hair and ears with a towel. "Hey, Ruko, I got this jacket here because it was clean. It was in a cardboard box, and what?" Usajima looked at the other two with a confused look. As they looked back at her with a set of faces, Tatsuma was incredulous, and Midoriya flustered. It would be a good time to point out the hoodie was half open, and combined with her exposed legs, made someone wonder if there was anything else underneath. "Oh, don't you have a hint of decency?" Tatsuma said, pushing the fellow pro-hero to the next room. "What? I needed fresh clothes. Sorry, I didn't ask first, geez." "That's not it." "Well, not only it, we have a young man here. Behave." She said the last part in a whisper. It really baffled Tatsuma how nonchalant this woman was about walking around practically nude. Or perhaps she was being too self-conscious because Midoriya was there. It wouldn't be a surprise. Whenever kids are involved, she always got into some sort of alert mode. That remark, however, had the opposite effect she desired, since the rabbit hero had a devious smirk crossing her lips. "Oh, so this is how you want to play. I see, I see." "Huh." The tanned lady rested one hand on her shoulder, shaking her head and clicking her tongue. "Ryuko, you naughty, naughty girl. I'm not letting you pass ahead of me like that, you know?" "What are you? Hey, that's not what I meant." She moved Usajama's hand in defense. Sure. You invite the kid to stay overnight, just the two of you alone in the building, getting comfy together, and then fireworks all the way, right?" Usajama taunted her, nudging her eyebrows. "See, cut that out. You can keep your weird fantasies to yourself." "Ah, you're blushing. Well, if you're not doing it, I might as well take the opportunity," she said, turning around and going after the green-haired teen. But then she felt a hand hold her firmly in place. Tatsuma didn't need to say a word. Her gaze was enough to send the message, "Stay away from him." However, there was something else there that the rabbit hero couldn't quite identify. It was one thing to be overprotective of children, but the blondie had other reasons behind it. How did she know that? Instinct, perhaps. Despite her banter, Yuzakayama didn't expect Tatsuma to actually make a move on him. She was too much of a goody two-shoes to do so. Not that Rumi herself was some kind of deviant. She was just curious, it's all. Plus, she was convinced Nimiri was overselling it. And maybe, just maybe, she wanted to see that cute face of his becoming even more adorable as she made him more embarrassed. Yeah, she didn't even need to do it. Teasing him would be enough. For a young, inexperienced kid like Midoriya, just showing her abs and toned legs should suffice. She remembered how flustered he got the other day when she hinted at her hips and all. "Although, I kind of feel like it, oddly enough. I should be exhausted, but, damn, why is it so hot here?" She brushed away the thought, then removed Tatsuma's hand from her. "You look tired. Why don't you go shower and rest?" she suggested to the blondie, not bothering to hide second intentions. "Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you want an honest answer?" There was a minute of silence. Then Tatsuma walked past Usajama, but this time was stopped in her tracks. "What's your plan then? Watch me all night?" "If needed be, yes." "Ugh, don't be so stuck up. Plus, do you think I don't have any self-control? Do you want an honest answer?" Another minute of silence. Usajama crossed her arms, tapping her foot. "Look, I'm not going to do anything too drastic, okay? Just mess with him a little, then call Nimiri out on her bluff." "But why tempt him anyway? And I've seen it, Rumi." Nimiri had that look in her eyes. She wasn't lying about her feelings, and she wasn't lying about, everything else. "Oh yeah? And how was she looking, then?" she asked, jokingly. Tatsuma squinted her eyes. Kinda like how you were looking at him while you two trained. That's how I know I can't trust you to be left alone with him," she said, slowly pushing Yuzajama away from the door. "And what about your obsession with him? After what Nimuri and you said, you want to tell me you didn't even imagine how it felt like?" She would be lying if she denied such a thing happened at least once. In fact, at this very moment, the blondie had to banish some lewd thoughts from clouding her judgment. "That's totally different, and you know it. I'm just trying to protect him." "From life? Are you his mother now?" The boy is at that age anyway, and if you believe in everything Nimuri said, maybe this could be a challenge. "See? You clearly have impure intentions." She pointed an accusing finger at the bunny girl. "And what are you going to do? Keep me away from him at all times?" Yuzajama pushed back with her chest and a daring gaze. "Actually, you could easily mistake Midoriya for a statue." He stood still like one. With only a towel around his waist, he was pretty confused by being in the bathroom with Tatsuma, also only using a towel to cover her body. A few minutes ago, he was staring into the void, trying to banish the thoughts that came from seeing Maruko in way too casual clothes. The simplicity of it, combined with her physique, was pretty alluring, and Nana didn't let that go unnoticed by the green teen. As if he needed any extra stimulus. His mind wandered to the girls and the times they dressed up for him. It wasn't quite the same, but also made the blood rush to his cheeks. Suddenly the door to the next room opened. Tatsuma came straight to him and grabbed his wrist, dragging the surprised teen into the bathroom. Without elaborating further, he wanted to ask what was going on, but she spoke first, telling him to undress and get in the shower, only to turn around quickly. After a moment of not seeing or hearing any movement, she ushered him to undress and fast, to which Midoriya complied, with his face red like a tomato. The bathroom wasn't the luxurious type, quite the opposite. An opaque glass and sliding door separated the shower. While it didn't allow for a perfect view of the person on the other side, you could still make the silhouette, and the mind is keen to fill in the blanks. Hence why Midoriya stood there for about 5 minutes, with no water running. He was waiting for Tatsuma to leave, but there she was, sitting on the other side only in a tower, with just a dubious glass separating them. Rukiyu-san? Did something happen?" "No, everything is fine. And you can call me by my name. Tatsuma is fine, Midoriya." "Tatsuma-san, then. Can I ask why are you here, exactly?" There was no other way to address this. She remained silent for a while, and all Midoriya could see was her shadow, shifting in place, uncrossing and crossing again her legs, which only made him feel more awkward. I thought of," she trailed off. "How do you even justify this? I kind of wanted to help to wash you back." The words jumped from her mouth before she could fully process the implications. Wash my back?" He looked at the opaque shadow with wide eyes, oblivious to her shocked expression. "Why, yeah, as sometimes you bathe together, all right?" Now she was just winging it, throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck. This bathroom doesn't have a bathtub, though. Maybe he was reading too much into it, and his previous lewd thoughts were clouding his judgment. She was Rukiyu, the 10th hero in the national ranking. If she said she just wanted to wash his back, he should believe her, right? Nimuri and you were different, and that involved another set of circumstances. Tatsuma has been nothing but professional with him up to now, and she didn't show any signs of being interested in him. He would know. Uraraka made it a point that he had to be more aware of his surroundings and the effect he had on people, especially women. Yeah, no way she was into him or anything. Well, of course. Bathtubs are sort of a luxury, and this is my workplace, not a place to relax. She followed in a serious tone. Right? Then. But I think after today we could use some relaxation. Eh? I mean, it's not good for your health to be tense at all times. Sometimes you have to loosen up, or you'll end up sick and underperforming, right? She said with fake confidence. I guess. What the hell am I saying? Ruko shouted in her head. For some reason, she felt extremely out of it, as if she couldn't behave like herself at all. At least when she was close to him. That bunny girl wasn't completely off the mark. She had been worrying about Midoriya for a while now, but it was purely for the sake of protecting him from harm and bad influence, not because she found him a cute, adorable cinnamon bun. No, stop. Ugh, why am I feeling like this? It's so hot in here. Ryuko, what are you doing? The more time passed, the weirder the mood got. She was sitting there for a while now, frequently crossing her legs, only draped in a towel, while he stood behind the glass pane, without even turning on the water. Was he that off-put by her presence? I mean, sure, she dragged him here out of nowhere and told him to strip undress. It was pretty unusual, but it wasn't the end of the world, right? Like, imagine if it was Rumi. Oh no, she would probably be all over him by now, doing something very shameful and naughty. But not Ruko. She only wanted to make sure he was fine and away from such a temptress. So, why did it feel so awkward to be next to him? She wasn't smelling that bad, was she? No, that was just sweat and dirt, and he wasn't even close enough to smell it. A fleeting thought crossed her mind, but she quickly blew it away. She wasn't being rude, as far as she could tell, and they were on pretty good terms in her opinion. So why was he so weirded out by her presence? He couldn't even look directly at her. For real, was he looking at all? The opaque glass erased all features but the general shape of the body, and if you add the towel, there wasn't really anything to see. Tatsuma wasn't exactly a vanity person, but she also took care of herself, and she dared say she was pretty in shape and even starred in a few commercials. She was no Midnight, sure, but she wasn't that far behind. If he liked Nimiri, he could certainly like her figure and… No, stop it, stupid brain and stupid hot towel. She shook her head again, fanning herself a bit and tugging at the tower hugging her bosom. Midoriya. Hi. The shower. Turn it on. Oh, right. The warm water began to wash his skin. Midoriya tried to focus all his brain power on cleansing himself, physically and mentally, but it was hard to do so with such a menial task, especially since the dragon hero now had planted an image in his mind. He has taken showers with the girls before, but this is not the type of image you get desensitized to, you know? At that point, he would need an entire onsen to accommodate everyone. But along with that thought came the idea of the blonde beauty also being there. The sound of her voice broke him from his brief fantasy. Midoriya, earlier during the fight, those villains said a lot of things that are not completely false, in a way. Everything was hazy and muffled, but I saw you got pretty bothered by it, to say the least. Sai, don't do that, okay? It's fine to feel anger, but you can't let it cloud your judgment. You're right. I'm sorry, Tatsuma-san. Don't be, you're still learning. These things come with experience. Some heroes even use that against their opponents. Like what Maruko does, right? She smiled at the hint of excitement in his voice. It didn't take much to break him out of a bad mood. Yeah, she likes to banter. This is not a sermon, just something to think about, so you can relax, all right? I'll definitely keep that in mind. But honestly, I could barely contain myself. All those things about corruption, using us as examples, and saying heroes are fake, maybe some, but not you. The conviction in his voice kind of took her off guard. Is that so? I think you're one of the best heroes we have, and not just because of the ranking. Working by your side, you take care of everyone around you and put them before your safety or well-being. It's everything a hero should strive for, right? I wouldn't set myself as an example, but… So I couldn't hold it back. I couldn't hear those lies about people important to me and simply let it slip. The steam was making the room a bit cloudy, and the sound of running water was kinda soothing. In that last sentence, one word stuck the most with Tatsuma. Important? He thinks I'm important? In what way? To what degree? Did he mean something else by this, or was he just saying, Maybe it was the steam, the heat, the towel hugging her chest, or the icky feeling of dirt and sweat on her skin. But the blondie had a storm of thoughts running around her head, and all of them were orbiting the young man showering just across that opaque glass. Tatsuma-san. This was a perilous situation. If it was any other woman in her place, imagine what could happen to him. Tatsuma-san. Someone with no self-restraint like Rumi, or a temptress like Mimiri. Hell, she wouldn't put it beneath Ruko either, considering how she was so desperate to find a partner. And she did comment a few times on how she preferred to date younger-looking guys. Should she be on the watch for more potential threats than the tan bunny girl? Tatsuma-san. She broke out of her inner world, looking to the side. Midoriya was poking his head from the partially open glass door, looking to the walls with a faint tinge of red across his cheeks. Yes. Can you pass me a towel? He pointed to the one laying next to her on a balcony. Oh, sure. Here you go, she said, mindlessly passing it to him. Midoriya dried himself behind the glass, unaware of her constant gaze. With just the towel around his waist, he stepped out and stood there for a moment before awkwardly making an important question. Are there any clothes I can spare? Ruko was absent. Her mind was too busy focusing on the slightly wet teen in front of her to think of anything else. Why does he look so? Oh God, those scars, you poor thing. What kind of physique is this? Does every other boy your age look just as good? What kind of training are they giving at UA? Tatsuma-san. Clothes. She slowly connected the dots. Ah, there's a box with a few donations in the next room. Pick whatever you feel comfortable with. With that, he left the bathroom, leaving Ruko alone with her thoughts and a warm feeling swelling in her chest. She removed her towel and stepped into the shower, letting the warm water wash over her skin, but she quickly turned it to cold to try and free her mind of inappropriate ideas, along with banishing her growing desires. Meanwhile, the Emerald Child sorted through the pile, finding a pair of pants that loosely fit him and a t-shirt with a bunny stamp on it. That would have to do for now. Coming back to the main room, Midoriya thought about what Tatsuma just told him. It wasn't the first time he got angry and reacted to something impulsed by his emotions. According to his track record, this wasn't a good strategy, and he was most likely to get hurt by the end of it. He wanted to say he couldn't help it because he felt his blood boiling when he saw people talking shit about his loved ones, but he had to act like a pro-hero if he wanted to become one. Still, insulting the image he had of All Might, Rukiyu, Maruko, and many other heroes was absolutely off-limits to him. In particular Midnight and MT, Lady, for obvious reasons. More importantly, for a brief moment, Rust actually made him stop to think. All it takes is one evil quirk. It wasn't that far from his situation, and he had seen what could happen to someone who had their aspirations denied right in front of them. He always chose not to think too much about it because he believed in the good inside every person. But Midoriya would be lying if he denied people could be quite cruel to others because of their quirks or lack thereof. This made him think of a certain blondie that has been a pain in his ass for a while now. If all it took was an evil quirk, was there a way to make things better? Could people like Rust, who lost faith in heroes, be saved? Could people like Napalm, who are always out for blood and causing harm, ever change? What about Leech and Doll? How to convince them not everyone will be mean to them because of their powers? This got him thinking a lot right after the fight ended, because, in a way, they reminded him of her, not only for the blood-related quirks, but because of their stories. Sure, he didn't get the full picture, but it happened enough times that all these people gathered into a villain group. Could Himiko really change? He asked himself. Probably for the 1000th time ever since she showed up at the gates of UA, battered and willingly. This is not a simple matter of how people view her quirk, Izuku. She has a crime list, as well as victims under her name. No matter how she got where she is, this is not something that can be ignored or worked around. I know that, but if she had another quirk, or if people didn't think she was a freak because of that. If she had someone to tell her she could do better, be better, like what All Might did to me. Well, maybe she would have turned all right, or maybe not. Maybe this is the lesser of devils, and she could have developed into an even bigger menace. Dealing with ifs and maybes won't help, dear. Then, what will? How do we help someone like that? You'll have to find out by yourself. I didn't fare well in this kind of situation. She's trying very hard to show you she changed. I suppose the best you can do is give her a chance. Nana's words floated in his mind for a while before fading into the mist of his subconscious. Only then did Midoriya notice the other pro-hero sitting on a couch across the room, arms wide open and legs crossed. "Yo, you were standing there for a while," she said with a small grin. "I wasn't, mumbling, was I?" "No, you just looked lost in thought. Why?" "It's just a habit of mine. He awkwardly scratched his head. The dimly lit room was silent enough that they could hear the running water from the shower. The silver light of the moon flooded through the large window, and the street lights below glimmered. "I watched some of the transmission they sent all over the place, especially your fight. You did well, kid." "Thanks." Uzujama leaned forward, resting her chin in one hand. "I also noticed you incorporated a few of my moves when you were fighting against the crazy hothead. Should I sue?" It wasn't my intention to steal. I just thought I needed to try something different." "Ha ha ha ha. I love this side of you, Midoriya." She burst into laughs, slapping her thigh and everything. Well, at least the tension in the air was gone. "Don't worry, even if there was some law over that kind of stuff, I doubt anyone would care. That's not why we give names anyway." "All right. But now that I think about it, your costume does look like a green bunny, with those ears and all. Are you a secret admirer?" she teased him further, getting a faint squirm from him. "Not really, but I see why it could be, confusing. It's a long story, haha." "Well, I'm kinda proud you chose to copy me in a fight. Usually, you go for the classics like All Might, although you do more kicking than the big man." "Yeah, I took some time to develop my shoot style. Someone told me I was too focused on being the shadow of All Might, fighting like him and all." "I understand, not everyone can be the symbol of peace," she said, throwing her hand up. "But for real, it was really cool. It feels like you're my biggest fan or something." This sort of triggered his fanboy mode. "You hold one of the fastest growths in the ranking. It's only natural lots of people will look up to you, Maruko-san." "That too, I guess, but I meant it in a more personal way. Like you have been watching me closely, you know?" A faint smirk began to form on her lips. "With all the training we did, I had to learn something, right? I just wish I didn't have to rely so much on others to learn new things," he said with a hint of defeat in his voice, looking down. He didn't think it was entirely bad, but at the same time, it could hinder his growth if Midoriya couldn't come up with stuff on his own. "Nah, there's nothing wrong with learning from others. I'm glad you learned something from me." In fact, staring at the floor, Midoriya didn't notice the rabbit hero getting up from the couch and casually approaching him, hands in her pockets, until she stopped right in front of him. "There's a lot more I want to teach you." The sudden closeness made Midoriya recoil by instinct, which elicited a light chuckle from the bunny girl. "Are you always this jumpy, or is it because of me?" No, there's nothing wrong with you, or you being here, I mean." Good. So you don't mind me getting closer, do you?" She took one step forward, closing the gap between them again, and he went back another step. The cycle repeated until they reached the wall, where Uzujama rested one hand, leaning in even closer to him. She had a devious smile on her lips as her ruby-red eyes fixated on his emerald-green ones. "You know, Midoriya, I have had my eyes on you for a good while now. You can say that's the reason why I teamed up with Ryukyu." "Really?" "Well, kinda. Like 97%, but that's beside the point. You see, I have heard a lot about you, and I gotta say, I'm impressed. I never paid attention to that sports festival from your school, but boy, aren't you a box full of surprises. Her other hand cupped his cheeks. And you look so cute with your messy green hair and those freckles. It almost doesn't match those nice muscles you have. Her hand then glided to his chest, tracing down to his abs and moving to his shoulder and biceps. Well, what can I say? I train a lot. Hee hee. Maybe if he played it cool, she would stop hitting on him. Yes, this was a full-on flirt, with no room for error. Ooh, looks like your battle bunny fantasy is about to be realized, Izuku. Not now, Nana-san. Her other hand rested on the wall, closing his escape routes. She closed the distance even further, pressing her thigh between his legs. I know you do a lot more than just studying and working out. Do you want to know what else I heard of? She leaned so she could whisper in his ears. I heard you got to be with every girl from your class. He pushed her away a little, shock filling his face. How did you know that? Oh, Nimiri told us. She did? Well, technically it was you after we got drunk as hell at my house. But then Nimiri had to spill the beans and then begged us not to tell everyone. I think the news about her having sex with her students wouldn't do well for her reputation. You are not going to tell anyone, are you? Who, me? Ha 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 ha. Don't you worry that pretty head of yours, I wouldn't tell a soul. I respect Nimiri. She goes around dressed like that without caring about what others think or say, and she gets the job done. She's a great hero. Midoriya let out a sigh of relief as he heard their secret was safe. Though it begged the question of who else knew. She did say us, and by the way she described it, it happened during some kind of party. He also wondered why neither Nimiri nor you told him about that. It's the kind of important stuff he felt he should know of. But that relief was short-lived, as he wasn't off the hook yet. The tanned woman cupped his cheeks again, and her face was dangerously close to his. However, I did tell her something else too. The tanned woman pressed her body against his, making sure she had the most physical contact possible with him. There is a price to keep my mouth shut. You see, she cupped his cheeks again, slowly getting their faces closer. I want to see why Nimiri got so hooked on you. Care to explain, big boy? That's it. He had to get out of there. Now, despite her being technically his senior, Midoriya was taller than Uzuyama, yet it didn't stop her from looking just as intimidating. Plus, she didn't just train her legs. Her entire body was sculpted with toned muscles that weren't just for show. The green teen had to put some effort into pushing the bunny girl away from him, who kept grinning all the time, her ruby red eyes half closed and staring at him lustfully. Come on, big boy, you're not scared of little me, are you? After everything I heard, I thought you would be down to some fun time with me. Finally, Midoriya managed to shove her back, keeping Uzuyama at arm's distance. I'm not afraid, I just don't want to have fun with you. I don't know everything you heard, but I don't just sleep with anyone, he said firmly, despite his flushed face. Oh, so it's like that. Yeah, it is like that. Okay, I get it. She did say you were loyal. I just PFFT. She suppressed a laugh, which confused him. Was he being pranked? What? No, nothing. Just, ha 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 ha. Man, I didn't expect you to be so stuck up. It's almost like a little dog. What? Can't do any of the naughty stuff without your mommy saying you can? Ha 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 ha, she said between laughs, ruffling his hair. Okay, so she was pranking him. Even so, Midoriya felt his pride being struck there. Sure, he would never betray Nimiri or any of his girls, but that didn't mean he was on a leash or something. He was just doing what any decent boyfriend would do. Boyfriends do what their girlfriends like to make them happy, right? Aside from having sex with multiple girls at the same time, probably, but their situation was special, so that didn't count. Hey, it's not like that. We have all agreed on this. Eventually. I don't know. Sounds like someone is being defensive about being Nimiri's pretty boy. I am not, and don't talk of Nimiri like that. I didn't mean to offend. Relax. All I'm saying is that it's pretty ironic you would be so pressed about it when you casually have sex with every girl around you. I can only assume Nimiri has you on a short leash, she said with a sly grin crossing her lips. That's not true. Technically it wasn't, but he would be lying if he didn't admit Nimiri took the lead whenever they were on the bed. She also got the girls to behave and tone down on the fire and brimstone whenever another one was added to the group, and she somewhat acted as a voice of reason. Nimiri clearly was the most experienced, so naturally, everyone listened to her. But that didn't mean he had to ask for her consent every time. He did listen to her because what she said was usually the right thing to do. Yeah, I think Nimiri was bluffing. You seem like a good kid, but there's no way you got her hooked up on your bed skills. But cheer up, not everyone can say they're Midnight's pet, Usajima said, lifting her shoulders and turning around with a smug smile. She got what she wanted, proof that Nimiri was exaggerating, and a few minutes of this green bean being flustered as a bonus. She would make sure to poke fun at Nimiri and you later. The whole harem thing and 2 of her adult friends being involved were still pretty shocking, but it wasn't the end of the world. Soon enough these horny teenagers would grow out of it and meet new people. Plus the rabbit hero could only imagine a bunch of awkward girls trying to make it work just like in that piece of hentai they saw that one time. Heh, and here I was thinking you would show me a good time, she said, waving a hand as she walked back to the couch. Okay, she was literally asking for it. Well, I would if you behaved better, Midoriya whispered to himself, but once again, she had excellent hearing. Her ears perked up and she froze in place, the smug smile crossing her lips widening more. Oh, is that a challenge? She turned around, hands in her pockets, sending a seductive stare at him. I don't think you can, kid. I could, but I won't because... Because? Because I have many, many girlfriends already. Good puppy. In an act of defiance, he marched to where she was, looking down at the bunny girl. Maybe this wasn't the best idea because he could see a lot of her cleavage like that, especially after she unzipped it halfway down. Eyes up here, hun. But it's okay, I don't mind. I'm not looking. And maybe you should mind. Maybe you should have me. Maybe I will. Is that an invitation? If you keep teasing, I wa. Before he could notice, Usajima swept his feet and grabbed him by his shirt, shoving him on the couch behind her and straddling his waist. All right then, let's skip the tease, shall we? She opened her hoodie, exposing her toned abs and more of her chest. And now Midoriya confirmed that she was, indeed, not wearing anything underneath. He was about to shove her back when the bunny girl suddenly jumped off him. Rather, she was forcefully removed by someone else. Tatsuma, with only a towel wrapped around her, pushed Usajima to the floor as she took Midoriya's side. What the hell do you think you're doing? Oh, what do you think? She complained as she got up. Needless to say, Tatsuma was pretty mad at her. I knew I couldn't trust you to be alone with him, said the dragon hero, pointing an accusing finger. So what? Didn't you just take a shower with him? She replied, making Tatsuma falter for a second. We didn't shower together. Yeah, right. Just be honest and admit you're curious and want to have him. I'm not interested in underage boys, thank you very much, creep. Oh please, you were talking about looks and all that, but you have been practically guarding him like he was made of gold or something. You want this and you know it. I'm just doing my job as a hero. What about you? Why are you so interested? Are you that desperate? Who is desperate? I'm just playing around, and I can do it whenever I want. While they bickered, Midoriya remained in his place, mildly stunned. Not only by this situation, but by the blondie fresh from the shower standing in front of him. It caught him off guard, and he couldn't help but stare for a while. Then, he noticed his phone on the couch, flashing and vibrating. He quickly picked it up when he saw who was calling. Nimiri? Izuku. Oh my, it's so good to hear your voice. Where are you now? No one has returned to UA. Yet? Hearing the voice of one of his lovers was pretty comforting, but he couldn't move his eyes from the ongoing argument. "I'm at Rukyu's office. She offered to have us stay overnight to rest. Is everyone else still in the city?" "Oh, yeah. Actually, I made a quick pause to try and call you. I saw the transmission. I'm glad you're okay, Izuku." He could hear the relief in her voice. "Don't worry, I'm fine. Mostly." Sigh, I know. I can't help it. After everything that happened, I can't stop thinking of what I would do if you vanished again. Hey, is that Rumi and Ruko in the background?" Before Midoriya could answer, he had his phone snatched from his hand by the blondie, who was now physically struggling to keep Usajima away from the green teen. "Ninuri, is that you?" "Ryuko, what's up? Thanks for letting them rest over there." "She's trying to have sex with him," the dragon hero shouted, trying to hold the bunny girl back with one hand because the other was keeping her towel secured. "She what?" "Don't be a dumb about it. Ruko, you were going to do the same later," said the tanned woman, who managed to grasp the phone from Ruko. "Hey, Nimiri, I'm calling out your bullshit. I bet your little puppy will melt under me if you know what I mean." This was meant to just provoke the R-rated hero, so the rabbit hero was not prepared for what came next. "Can you pass back to Izuku?" Nimiri's tone was dead serious, so both women stopped the fight and gave it back to the green teen. "Hi. Make sure they can hear, honey. Just this time I'll ask you this. Do that bunny senseless." The three of them were speechless for a solid minute. "Nimiri, are you sure about that?" asked the green teen. Even if she asked him to do it, it was bound to cause chaos if the other girls ever found out, and he was not going to hide anything from them. "Your choice, I'm going there, even if you don't." But the girls, she hung up. There was an awkward silence in the room before Usajima broke it. "Well, now you have permission from your owner. Want to do it now?" "You're not doing anything with him, Rumi." Ruko immediately went into defense mode, grabbing Midoriya and holding him tight against her. "Ugh, this is getting old, Ruko. I'm just going to tease him or something. It's just a kid, he won't last long." "Rumi, back off or I swear I'll kick you to the street butt naked." "Oh my, why are you so protective of him?" she said, stepping forward to try and grab Midoriya by his arm, in hopes of yanking him from the dragon hero, but Ruko recoiled, hugging him even tighter. "He's a precious child. Why do you want to have sex with him?" "Because he's surprisingly hot and a good fighter for his age, that's all." Now that they have stated their reasons out loud, it dawned on them what exactly they were doing. Rumi was practically naked, and she was past the point of just teasing. Ruko only had a towel around her body, and even that was only covering her front because she held poor Midoriya's face against her chest. Once she realized that, she let go of him like a hot iron bar, and of course the towel fell, exposing her completely to his emerald green eyes. "Ah, don't look." She was at a loss of words. "Sorry," he spat out, turning around, but then he found Rumi, who was also displaying everything, so he had to find somewhere else to look. Oh, come on, why did they have to stand around naked? Regardless of his opinion, his body would react to all that visual and physical stimulus, so he couldn't help the growing bulge inside his pants. "Ninuri already gave you the green light, so why don't you take the opportunity? Show them why the girls can't have enough of you," Nana teased him. "I don't want to bang Maruko just because she's daring me to, or because Ninuri told me to do it. Besides, I'm sure she said that out of anger or something." "But you were thinking about it back then, right?" "Well, yes, but just because she was teasing me, I don't, have feelings for her. It would be wrong." "Oh, Izuku, I hope you realize how precious you are," Nana said, completely endeared by this display of purity of heart. "That said, she is being quite disrespectful. For your own sake, you should stand your ground, Outside of his mind, the bunny girl rested a hand on his shoulder, turning him to face her. "So, are we doing this or not?" "No." "Really? Yuzujama was taken aback by the dry response. What? You don't like beefy women? She asked, flexing her arm. And no, I just don't want to do it with you. Is it too difficult to understand? Well, you are telling me no, but this is saying yes to me, she said, gently pressing her other hand on his crotch, which made him jump back, but Rumi followed, topping him on the couch again. I can't help it, but that doesn't mean I want to. You can be honest, I'm no midnight, but I know you love my body. Practically everyone does. Especially these beautiful, toned, smooth thighs. She said that, and with one move, she had his head in a leg lock. Midoriya tried to break free, but to no one's surprise, she had incredible strength in her legs, to the point he felt mildly suffocated. He would appreciate the smoothness of her thighs more if he wasn't worried about his loyalty to his lovers and the decreasing supply of oxygen. Come on, don't fight it. Or do fight, if that's your thing, you know you like it. So why bother with what a bunch of high school girls will say? Why bother with what Nimuri tells you to do? Even if she's more experienced, I bet I can make you feel just as good. Maybe even better, you never know before you try. He was considering using full cowl to undo her leg lock, but Ruko shoved Rumi down and helped him to pry her legs open enough so he could slip away. But he was out of one lock to be stuck into another, except this was much more gentle and very soft. The blondie pulled him to her and smothered his face in her bare, wet chest. I can't hold it any longer. Before he could even ask, Ruko pulled him, surprising both the green teen and the bunny girl. He pulled back, but she held firmly, closing the gap between them as she laid on top of him, missing her towel completely. Hey, I was going first. Rumi was going to push the blondie away, but Ruko's head moved up, and she growled at her, sending a menacing stare at the rabbit hero. Ruko looked down at Midoriya again, who was also pretty startled by this, and pulled him up and against her chest, hugging him tight and soothing him. Her hands carefully stroked his hair. Tatsuma-san? Sigh, your hair feels so soft, Midoriya. What's going on? I'm sorry, I can't help it, I need this. You need what? Midoriya resisted her advances, but he was in an awkward position. It was only when she let go to take his shirt off that Midoriya slipped away, backing off from her, but then he bumped on Rumi, who immediately got him in a headlock. Ruko growled at her again, and it was almost like she would transform into a dragon and devour the bunny girl. Oh oi, Ruko, cut that out. Let him go. Why should I? Let him go. Fine. In a second, Midoriya found himself with his face shoved between her soft mounds again, and she kept snarling at Rumi while holding him. Okay, something was definitely going on here. This behavior was just too different from their usual, as Ruko seemed about to claw out Rumi's face. So doing his best to ignore the naked state of the person hugging him, he asked her. Tatsuma-san, what's going on? Please, tell me what's going on. It's worrying me. Seeing her in this state made him more concerned about her well-being than anything. Plus, this might have been an after effect of the poisonous mist both her and Rumi inhaled. It took the blondie a few moments, and she seemed to struggle with her desire to smooch his face again, and after a moment of moderate clarity, she began to talk. I don't know, something is not right. My head. The last time I felt like this was when I was a kid. Sometimes I feel like I need to have something for myself, and the more I think about it, the more. Her eyes seemed to lose focus again. Rather, she got tunnel vision on the green teen underneath her. Does that mean you want me? That much he understood. Yes, no, I don't know how it started. Maybe it was when Nimuri explained how she loves you, and how you love her back. Or maybe it was after you came to work with me. I don't know how to explain, but you're such a wonderful child, Midoriya. I don't know what I would do if something happened to you. Just thinking about it makes my heart ache, and I want to hold you and never let go. I know I shouldn't, but I want to. I want to feel this love Nimuri talked about. She hugged him again, pressing his face against her chest, I would never hurt a good child like you, but here I am, taking you to the wrong path. I'm so selfish. But you're so precious, Midoriya, and you smell so nice. And those gorgeous, green eyes. Hehe, I'm not the great hero you thought I was. Even if you are so sweet and so cute and dedicated and strong, and your scent is so intoxicating. Her voice slowly changed from broken to deep and alluring, as if she had exchanged personalities. He could feel the heat in her skin. When she pulled back and pinned him down, Midoriya looked into her eyes as she stared at him. The slits were wide open, and she was completely focused on him. If he moved an arm, she would grasp it firmly. If he moved a leg, she would try and lock it with hers. Trying to squirm only made her press herself more against him. Her hot breath brushed his face, just like when the prey is completely captured by the hunter. And while that went on, Midoriya tried to make sense of this. The old man's quirk apparently only involved making people sick. What else could be the cause of this change? Whatever the case might be, he had to stop her before she did something she would regret later. Tatsuma-san, let's slow down a little and think this through. You don't actually want to do this, right? Yeah, I want to, but I shouldn't. I know it's wrong, but I want you so bad. Izuku, ha ha ha. I called you by your first name, come on. Call me Ryuko. Tatsuma-san. Ryuko-kun, say it. Ryuko-san, please. Ah, it feels so good to be like this, on top of you. Does Nimuri sit on you like this? Sometimes, but listen, I think you're... Let's make this our thing then, okay? I'll straddle you, and you'll look pretty under me, and then Her pupils shrunk and dilated a few times, and she lost her focus. He used this opportunity to talk her out of this. Ryuko-san, there's something wrong. You're not like this, right? You don't actually want to, have sex with me, right? No, I would never. Right? You wouldn't hurt a child. No, she seemed to finally come back to her senses. Ryuko took her hands off his arms, slowly backing away while Midoriya sat up. I'm sorry, I don't know what came to me. It's okay, I think it wasn't you. It's just a hunch, but maybe it was that toxic mist or the blood HP gave to you and Ak. His line was cut by the bunny hero, who had him in a headlock. Again. Forget it, I don't care anymore, she groaned in frustration, shifting positions so she was on top of him. We're doing this whether you want it or not. I'm too hot. Rumi forcefully pulled his pants down, but before she could even take a better look down there, she got flipped over and out of the Emerald Teen. Don't you dare, Rumi, Ryuko shouted, holding Midoriya protectively. You're not going to harm him, Midoriya, this hard feeling, is this your... It wasn't his fault. She pulled him against her, and he was now pantless. And considering the situation, there was a very slim chance Midoriya would not have a boner. Acknowledging that didn't make it any less embarrassing, though, as the blonde hero slowly looked down, finding his erect member pressed against her body. If she felt warm before, now something inside her flared up in blazes. The prolonged stare only made Midoriya more flustered. Ryuko-san, if you could, let go. Mine, she whispered. Sorry, what did you say? Mine. Apparently, releasing him wasn't an option. Ryuko embraced him again, pulling him away from Rumi, who was trying to sneak behind the boy again. She gnarled at the tanned woman, who scoffed and backed off for now. Having asserted her dominance, the blondie resumed staring at Midoriya's eyes, running her fingers through his green locks. He pushed her off, but she too was surprisingly strong for someone of her build. Shhh, don't fight, my darling. It's okay, you're safe with me, right? This is the opposite of safe. No, don't struggle. I'll keep you safe. Yeah, I'll keep you safe with me. Yes, Mommy will protect you, right? Yes, I will, my precious emerald, my treasure, endearing little hero. And from there she was completely lost. Whatever binding Ryuko had to her usual personality was severed, taken over by the rush of libido coursing through her veins. She relished his taste, his scent, the feeling of his body touching her hot skin, and she loved every single second of it. But she wanted more, she needed more. That burning ache between her legs wasn't going away anywhere, and as much as she knew deep inside it was against her principles, she couldn't resist it. The urge was too great to hold back. She only stopped when she pulled back a little to admire the beautiful young man she was straddling, eyes full of lust and anticipation for what was to come. I want you, I want this, I want you all for myself. Ha ha ha, you'll be mine, right? I'll keep you safe, I'll love you lots and lots, and you'll love me back, right? Right? So I can have this, we can do it, right? It was clear to him that Ruko was out of it. Whatever happened there seemed to trigger an animalistic side of her, along with some maternal instinct of protection. But specifically at this moment, he couldn't care less. Midoriya held great respect for Rukiyu as a hero, but right now, he was quite frustrated. For starters, the timeout on the more intimate activities with his harem was very welcomed at first. He liked the sec, but he also liked spending time with them, and not having to hide the fact he loved them, or sneaking around at night. But after some time, even he was missing it, as he sort of grew used to having long, passionate nights with his lovers. He passed out from exhaustion, yes, but he really liked it. And on top of that, the great question. Why did this always happen to him? He would try to be a good boyfriend, and some random woman would try and have her way with him. It made the girls right in being so overzealous about this because apparently Midoriya simply couldn't help it, right? Well, no, not this time. I'm sorry, Ruko-san, but I'm doing it on my terms this time. Everyone had a limit, and Midoriya just reached his. All that teasing, two stunning ladies pushing and pulling him around as if he was a rag doll. So they started to have some fun. Ha, this should be enough. He tried to get up, but Ruko had him locked in place. Ha, not yet, hun, I still want it. Here, she said, pulling his waist against herself and cupping his face with her hands. Either way, she was about to feel even better. As she came down from the clouds, she looked at the boy under her, and judging by his reddened face and short breath, he had an equally satisfying experience. They began to do it again, and Izuku had best time with the girls. Well, that was a good last memory on the plane of the living, she supposed. Rumi felt the gentle yet heavy hand of Nimiri land on her shoulder, which once again sent a shiver down her spine. She smiled uneasily at the older woman, feeling like a kid again, caught in the act and about to get her sorry whooped. Except she was sure Nimiri would do more than just that. Oh my, you really did it. I hope you learned something from this. That wasn't the answer Rumi was expecting. And what about you, Ruko? Eh? The blondie yelped when her name was mentioned, feeling the weight of Nimiri's cold gaze. Up TP now, she had just been watching them go, sort of in a trance. Sai, what am I going to do with you, honey? She said, shoving Rumi out of the way and sitting next to Izuku. Look, I think that this time it's no one's fault. They're not acting like usual, he said, trying to explain things. That much I can tell. Well, maybe not about her, but if Ruko also had sec with you, then something is definitely off. Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Don't make me change my mind, Rumi. Anyway, let's just go back to UA, honey. It was a long night, and the surprises are still coming one after the other, right girls? Nimiri said as she helped Izuku up, picking up what she assumed were his clothes from the floor and passing them to him. So, you're not going to do anything about this? Asked the white-haired woman, careful to not provoke her any further. I'm tired, sweaty, and I have classes to lecture on tomorrow. I was pretty pissed off but cooled down on the way here, so I figured I will not unload all my pent-up feelings on you too, despite what happened. Nobody can say I'm not merciful, she said, running a hand through her dark hair. Sigh, and thanks to the principal, I can't have any quality time with my honey. Consider yourselves lucky we're not on high school grounds, otherwise, She stopped mid-sentence as her eyebrows rose. Nimiri had an epiphany. Is everything all right? He asked her, putting the shirt on. The dark purple-haired lady spun on her heels, facing him and grabbing his shoulders. A large grin crossed her lips. "Take that shirt off right now. We're doing it." "We are? Right now?" he said, glancing at the two other naked women right next to him. "Oh yes, we are. I just realized Nezu sent you and me off with these exact words, and I quote, 'Please refrain from having any activity with our students within you limits.'" She told him excitedly and ignored the last bit where he mentioned them having some restraint. "So that means if we're outside of UA, the principal won't bat an eye. He did that on purpose. Geez, how did I not think of this sooner?" "Well, great news. The girls will love to hear that. I can't wait to get back and—" "You're getting back on that couch. Honey, we have much to catch up on." "Wait, didn't you say you were tired?" he asked her, out of worry. Well, she wasn't wrong. Nimiri and Izuku got more and more enthralled with each other. "And say, we never did it with me on my costume, right?" "No, but I'm looking forward to it." "Aw, just in my costume. You always look amazing to me." "I know, silly," she said with a soft giggle, giving a peck on his forehead and looking into his eyes with endearment. "I missed you so much, honey." "I missed you too, love." Ahem, the two ladies would like something. Ruko fidgeted with her hands while Rumi looked to the side, scratching the back of her head. Their heads were clearer now that those primal feelings were washed away, but they still felt, and it was significantly harder to push aside with that little show going on in front of them. "I know I shouldn't be asking, but since we already got to this point, well, the night is still young." The blondie made her request in the most roundabout way possible, but her intentions were clear. She planned to simply pretend this night never happened, so she thought to also make the most of it. Must be the hormones still talking a bit. I'm gonna be honest. I'm still feeling hot, and he's pretty impressive. There, I admit it." Rumi was more straightforward, as usual. "Plus, we have a score to settle. I hate leaving things on draws, and I expect you to return." Nimiri looked at the bunny girl with a raised eyebrow, then at the green teen under her. Did she really? He gave her an awkward smile. "In my defense, I didn't have much of a say." I wanted to be your first on that, but you kept saying we could try another time." "Humph." Nimiri playfully pinched his ear. "Naughty boy, I see I'll have to remind you of a few lessons." The dark-haired lady sat straight up, straddling the emerald child and looking back at the two others present. She ripped and removed the rest of her costume, leaving only the thigh-highs, mask, and handcuffs. "All right, ladies. Just because my night turned for the better, I'll allow it. Tomorrow we'll go back to UA and have Recovery Girl check up on you. For now," she looked at Izuku again, "we're going to have a lot of fun." And so the four of them had a pretty intense and passionate night, completely oblivious to a pair of curious blue eyes watching from a dark corner. Her recovery rate was as impressive as her energy reserves. They all needed another shower by the end of it. The next morning came, and despite the marks of the chaos from the previous night, people were getting to their daily business more or less as usual. There wasn't much else to be done. You pick your losses and begin to rebuild again. The police teams were working around the clock, trying to figure out where to put such a large number of criminals. Shop owners had to assess the damage and see what was under their warranties. And the young heroes of UA had another day of school, for the duties of a hero never truly ended. Specifically, one green-haired teen, in particular, felt concerned early this morning. Not only did he have a steamy hot session involving two other pro heroes, of the top 10 national rankings nonetheless, but they also had yet to see if something was affecting Yuzujama and Tatsuma in the aftermath of their fight against the hemorrhage cult. He would have to go through that process of explaining to the rest of his girlfriends why exactly he ended up doing this, but in his defense, Kayama encouraged him. The girls were more comprehensive now, so Midoriya guessed this wouldn't cause too much trouble. Plus, the revelation of Principal Nezu's loophole would definitely make them happy, so perhaps he could balance things out. While Midoriya had these things running around in his mind, someone else looked pretty happy that morning. Well, Kayama and Hado were pretty happy, the former for finally spending some quality intimate time with her dearest love, and the latter for a good night of sleep. She couldn't wait to talk with Amajiki about the mission and everything that happened. Meanwhile, Usajiyama followed with the tired face of someone who didn't get enough sleep, yawning now and then. Tatsumo was looking rather down all the way, stealing a few glances at the green teen in front of her. The group made the trip back to U, in silence, except for Hado humming a happy tune. Upon arriving at the gates, the R-rated hero verified her credentials and headed to the infirmary. Halfway there, Hado ran ahead to her dorms, eager to share her stories with her friends. Midoriya had to prepare for class, so he excused himself too, but before they parted ways, a figure came running towards them. Kayama, and he knew that round-faced brunette pretty well. "Deku-kun," Uraraka shouted, still sprinting towards him. She halted right in front of him, almost knocking Midoriya back. He was more than happy to see her first thing in the morning, but that feeling was blown away when he looked at her face, and how her hands trembled as she held his own. "Uraraka, what is up? Did something happen?" She waited a moment to breathe in and out, then began to pull him, going back to the dorms. Droplets pooled in her eyes. "Deku-kun, Iri-chan is gone." When they barged into the room, all the eyes focused on the green-haired teen sided by the brunette. Everyone had a mix of worry and sadness on their faces, even Bakugo, to an extent. Before Midoriya could ask questions, Aizawa walked up to him, pushing the boy outside. "Sensei, where are?" "To the principal's office. We have some questions." "Eh? To me? But Iri-chan is missing." "Yes. That's precisely why you'll have to tell exactly what you did last night before leaving UA," he told the young man, with a stern voice that wasn't very characteristic of him. This only made Midoriya more confused. If Eri was gone, why was he being brought up for questioning? Practically everyone left to assist in the crisis last night. Were they screening everyone? Unless... A terrible thought crossed his mind. "Aizawa-sensei, Himiko, did she?" "Yes. Toga Himiko is also missing." He clenched his fists. It was his fault. Last night. The scruffy man stood in front of the TV screen, watching the transmission going on. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. Suddenly, a cult of weirdos decides to call for an uprising, openly, and even daring the heroes to try and stop them. From what he heard, this did not come from anywhere, and they had quite some time to organize, which only made things worse. That meant the heroes were falling behind in dealing with cases like that, be it because of a lack of manpower, or because they were not seeing something. Regardless, now they had to deal with this chaos and then assess the situation after everything calmed down. The last thing they needed was public opinion on heroes getting another dirty patch. Tired as always, Aizawa rubbed his eyes, reaching for the eye cleaner in his pocket. They had been working around the clock recently, and after a lot of dead ends, even he would feel a bit frustrated. Then it happened. A purple mist appeared in the room. He caught that from the corner of his vision, and in a matter of seconds, he jumped back, eyes glowing red and bandages unraveling around him. Unfortunately, something akin to mud stuck his hand to the wall. His expression became serious as he saw just who came out of the mist. Oi, even for someone like you, these reflexes are too fast. Aren't you super cool, Eraserhead?" said the young man with severed hands all over the place and covering his face. "Shigaraki?" He was accompanied by Kirigiri and another villain, a lanky guy with a toad face. Eraserhead? I'll hold him off, Shigaraki." "Easy there, this guy, even restricted like that, he will knock you out." "Even you?" "Yeah, even me. I guess we got a lucky shot by having you spit before we crossed the portal. RNG is on my side this time." Silence fell in the room. The tension was so high it might cause sparks to fly. Eraserhead kept his eyes focused on the villains while his free hand slowly got closer to the knife hidden on his back. Meanwhile, Shigaraki slowly walked around the common room, looking around. Oh, so this is where those kids spend their days. Huh. Yue surely spoils these brats. Ni, if you're here while hell is breaking loose outside, I bet there's something important here, right? Or maybe our students are more than capable of dealing with small fish. I would be worried if I was you. TCH, you're not wrong, but I know from a trusty source that there's something special here. Or rather, someone, ha 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 ha. Shigaraki, Kurogiri interjected before he said more, but that was more than enough for Aizawa to connect the dots. Why are you here? Asked the pro-hero with a deadly serious tone. If he was quick and precise enough, he could throw the knife right through Shigaraki's leg and cut an artery. Anything to build him some time. Well, wouldn't you like to know? The gray-haired man turned to the stairs with an increasing grin crossing his dry lips, but something made him stop dead in his tracks. Something that Aizawa couldn't see. You. Or rather, someone. Shiggy, said the blonde girl, genuinely surprised to see her former boss. From where he was, Eraserhead couldn't see Toga. Time was running out before he blinked, and he would probably only have that opening to free himself from that goop. But something else worried him. Coming here at this moment couldn't be a mere coincidence. They could have guessed the chaos would divert a lot of attention from the pro-heroes, but how could they have guessed exactly where Toga was, and that the place would be mostly empty? They had to know of this beforehand, otherwise, the League wouldn't come with such small numbers, especially after laying low for so long. Himiko, you spent a lot of time playing house with Midoriya, huh? Not as much as I would like, to be honest. See, they keep me on a short leash, she said, pointing to the collar. I see. Well, this will make things easier. I get to kill you first, then I get what I came for. Game over. What? Kill me? For what, exactly? She asked, puzzled. If that was genuine or just her stalling, he didn't know. Shigaraki was still under the effect of the erasure. For one, your stupid date, which turned into a major pain in the ass. Second, you gave the heroes a lot of info. It's treason then. Lastly, you have been trying to turn into one of those heroes for a while now, so all the more reason for me to turn your neck into a pile of dust, he said, taking one step up the stairs. Toga went one up too. Now, wait just a moment. Who said anything about me being a hero? Isn't that why you're here, and why you have one of those? Shigaraki pointed at her green hero costume, a facsimile of Deku's, save for a few details, and more tight-fitting. Oh, this? It's so that I can mix around. You see, Shiggy, I only wanted to get closer to Izuku, but I never planned to be a hero. Oh, really? Yeah, why would I? It's so boring. They have to go to school and do homework and tests, and I can't even stab anyone. It's not the easy life I want, you know? Shigaraki looked at her with heavy skepticism. It wouldn't be the first time she had lied to him. Heck, she lying about things she planned to do and already did was the whole reason why they were in this mess to begin with. And why should I trust you? Ouch, after everything we have been through. Shiggy, do you really not trust me? His unmoving stare was enough of an answer. Fine. How about this? I'll help you get whatever you came here to get. Who told you I came here to get anything? We just came to kill you. And risk getting yourself caught? Shiggy, please. I know you don't hold me that close to your dried up, cold heart. I know the place pretty well. Whatever it is, I can get it to you faster, so you won't have to worry that much about being caught. Or I could just ignore you and do as I want. Yeah, you could do that, and get caught when Aizawa-sensei gets free and come after you. Then, the alarms would blare all over the place, and you would have a few more pro-heroes to deal with, and Kurogiri-kun wouldn't be able to give us an easy escape. Sounds like a plan to me. I'll take my chances. You can't help me in this anyway. Are you sure? Are you really sure? Because I have an idea of what you want. She took another step back, showing her fanged grin. And that would be? A little girl with gray hair and a little horn on her forehead. I heard she has a very powerful quirk, but can't quite control it. Now, imagine what would happen if someone else had that quirk, someone that could control it. His deadpan face turned into a grimace. Himiko, where's the girl? He took another step up, but she blocked the way. Slow down there. Shigi, you can't just go up there and take the girl like that. She can't control it, remember. The last thing you want to do is to scare her and be turned into a toddler. Or even worse. Shigaraki remained silent for a moment. She does have a point, Shigaraki, Kurogiri added. The young villain pondered a bit before looking up at the blondie again. So what? Are you going to tell me she trusts you? She will after I work out a few details. Toga, touch that girl and you'll be dead on the spot, Eraserhead warned her from his spot. Oh, Aizawa-sensei, I thought you were alive, so I didn't show myself. Don't worry, sensei, I'll take good care of Eri-chan. His eyes widened a little in surprise. That voice. Voice command, Midoriya Izuku. Restriction 0. Well, we don't have much time. See you soon, sensei. With that, he heard rushed footsteps going up. Kurogiri followed suit, followed by Toadface. Eraserhead immediately pulled the knife and started to carve out the thick mud gluing his hand to the wall, which was noticed by the last villain. He tried to jump at the pro-hero, but had his head wrapped by the bandages. One pull and he got a knee connected to his stomach, knocking him out. Aizawa returned to free his hand as fast as he could. Every second counted, and he was trying his best, but this thing was giving him a lot of trouble. He pulled himself out, stepping on the wall for extra leverage, while the knife slowly cut through the thick material. His eyes were drying up, and he thought hearing noises on the upper floors. One final pull, and he managed to free himself, but unfortunately, he blinked. Not wasting time, he rushed upstairs at max speed, blasting through the door of Eri's room, only to see the black mist dissipate in front of him. On the floor, there was a book that Mirio gave to Eri. She knew how to unlock the thing, but more importantly, she mimicked your voice to bypass the security. The only way she could do that was if she drank your blood. Midoriya, Aizawa didn't need to finish. The green teen already knew what was the question. Sigh yes, let her drink a little. He looked at the floor in defeat and shame. He should know something like this would happen. Do you understand the severity of this single decision? The teacher was merciless and straightforward. There was no other way to address this now. Midoriya stood up frozen, looking at the floor as the teachers and pro-heroes waited for his response. This wasn't really necessary, for they could imagine how guilty the young man felt. Regardless, Aizawa was impassive, and he wanted a clear response from one of his best students, so he waited, glaring at him with unwavering eyes and arms folded. I understand. The sound of defeat hung heavy in his voice. It's good that you understand, and since you're pretty smart, you must know there will be consequences. But before that, I have another question. Why? This question got Midoriya a little confused, so he looked up at his homeroom teacher and fellow pro-heroes. Eh? The blood. Why did you give it to her? Well, How could he explain this? He should have known better. He knew better. Why did he trust Himeko to begin with? What was he thinking? She was a villain through and through, and she couldn't be changed. She openly admitted so, despite acting differently. And he thought Himeko only wanted to mess with him. After those nightmarish days he spent in that dark place. It wasn't enough to just torture him. She had to trick him again and shake his convictions, or so he thought. It was clear now that she just wanted to infiltrate and escape with Eri when the opportunity appeared. He admittedly got blinded by the idea of her redeeming herself for a second. Heck, he was almost getting convinced she actually had genuine feelings for him, but no. Toga Himiko was an irreparable villain, a psychopath, and a deranged person who hurt him to no end and kidnapped poor little Eri. and all the blame was his to carry. I thought she could change, Midoriya admitted, shamefully. I thought she had changed, but that was never the case. I failed. I'm deeply sorry. You seem to have learned a valuable lesson. Unfortunately, as I said, there will be consequences, Aizawa continued. Aizawa-san, this is a dire situation, yes, but I think there are other ways to solve it. With all due respect, All Might, this is a problem even you wouldn't solve, and Midoriya is the one to blame. The blond man reclined back in his seat. The League of Villains had a specific interest in Eri's peculiarity. They somehow bypassed our protocols again, and all of that comes after the fact she's just a little girl traumatized by her previous custodians. I cannot stress how serious this is. I get it, but just beating this into his head won't change anything, will it? Kayama intervened, getting closer to the scruffy man. They exchanged some fierce glares. Let me remind you, I'm still the teacher responsible for these students, as well as Eri. He didn't think she would make excuses for the boy just because of the nature of their relationship. But at the same time, Kayama wasn't a person with a cold heart. Deep down, she wanted to defend him. Damn it, he didn't want to bash him either, but such was the problem they had to deal with. The fact of the matter was that he caused it, and now it was Aizawa's duty to act accordingly, without partiality. We already spent too much time on this anyway. As for your punishment, Midoriya. Sensei, before you tell me I'm expelled, I just want to say, his emerald green eyes focused on the pro-hero with so much intensity they looked like green flames. I will not stop until I find Eri and get her back safe and sound. The room went quiet for a moment, and all eyes focused on the young man. Whatever guilt and shame he had on him up until now has been converted to determination, commitment, and sheer will. That's good to hear, but who said anything about expulsion? Even without my license, I will keep looking and I'm not being expelled. And now the young man was taken by confusion. Aizawa rubbed his eyes, then picked his eye cleaner, applying it as he spoke. I said there will be consequences, but did I ever mention expulsion this time? No, but as I said, we have already spent too much time on this. Your punishment will be decided later after we find Eri and bring her back safe and sound, as you suggested. And we definitely includes you. The last night clearly shows it. We don't have the luxury of picking and choosing who can and cannot help us. Aizawa then turned to Rukiyu, who stood quietly in her corner up until now. Her heart felt heavy with the knowledge of the situation, but at the same time, a part of it also hurt for watching Midoriya being grilled by Eraserhead, of all people. Ryukiyu, I hope you can still keep them under you for a while longer. Let's make use of what we learned from that mess of yesterday. I want every hero of every agency to work together. Exchange info, coordinate, find leads, and do your thing. This is a top priority, he stated, then glanced at Principal Nezu for his approval. The giant mouse nodded, and that was enough for him, so he took his leave, but not before speaking to Midoriya again, holding the door open. I will hold you to that promise, Midoriya, until you find her, he said, never turning back to face the green teen, but there was no need to. He knew his students fairly well by now, and he knew exactly how that boy would answer. Understood. The door closed behind him. Even without Aizawa in the room, the weight of his presence still hung in the air. None of the adults said a word until a rather impatient bunny girl broke the silence. So, what now? If she could be more informal, Maruko would probably have done so. As Aizawa said, this will take some extra coordination from us, on a scale that we didn't see before. Our enemies are getting clever, and they're making their moves in the shadows. We're at such a stage where heroes need to be more proactive in dealing with villains, Nezu said, looking at his colleagues and then at the green-haired teen in front of his desk. You can say it again that they're getting clever. They bypassed our defense protocols more than once, even with the extra precautions we took, Power Loader said, already thinking of upgrades to the defense systems of UA. Well, you could argue this was human error this time, Cementos added. Harsh, but the truth. No, not entirely. I checked the logs and there was some abnormal behavior around the time they teleported into Heights Alliance. The type of thing that you need internal information to hack and control. Are you suggesting that? Snipe began, but it was Present Mike who concluded the line of thought. That we have a traitor among us? Haven't we already considered this possibility? One problem at a time, everyone, Nezu cut in, ready to give instructions. I'll contact the investigative department and see if they can help us. Rukiyu-san, if you could be so kind as to inform Centipter of the situation. Hi, I'll look around myself too, said the blondie, glancing at Midoriya. By the few things she knew about him, she could tell he wouldn't rest if he wasn't able to participate in the searches. Excellent. As for our security systems, we should strive to always improve. We can't play this game of catching up any longer. I'll be counting on you once more, Power Loader-san. Got it, boss. Ahem, if you don't mind, Power Loader-san. I have been talking to a friend of mine who I believe could help us with that. He's pretty knowledgeable in the creation of support gear and other technologies, and I believe he could give valuable insight. All Might added. Good to hear. Any help will be welcomed. Finally, Midoriya-san. Hi. I know it's hard to rein our emotions in desperate times, but I'll need you and all of your friends to remain level-headed and professional about it. I don't think I need to explain why harsh actions are ill-advised, do I? His eyes told the green teen everything. Do not make stupid decisions. I understand. Good. You're free to go now. And just like that, Midoriya left the principal's office, with his mind racing and his hands tightened into fists. How he wished things were different, but what has been done could not be undone, and now he had to deal with it. The punishment further ahead wasn't even weighing on him, for all he could think of was the gray-haired girl and her sweet, innocent smile. If he failed on rescuing her, or if she was hurt because of his actions, Midoriya wasn't sure if he could look at Mirio's face ever again, or at All Might's. Hell, how would he face his lovers knowing this entire situation could be avoided if he didn't fall for Himiko's tricks? Truth be told, this could all have been averted if he just let her catch dust into a dark cell, with the key cast into the ocean. The League of Villains would have it coming for them, but Himiko would pay for this. Back to facing his harem, when the green teen entered the dorm's common room, he found a larger crowd than usual. Every girl present turned to face the door, and they rushed to meet him when they caught a glimpse of him. Deku-kun, is everything all right? What happened, Muscles? Did they say something about Eri-chan? Ribbit. Is that blonde devil responsible for this, dear? Baby, did the collar malfunction or... With everyone speaking at the same time, Midoriya was quickly overwhelmed. Girls, wait, not all at once, he said, pushing them back a little. It was obvious to them now that he was upset about the situation, and reasonably so. As they gave him enough space to fully enter the dorms, he met the gaze of the other students from the hero course, and they were just as curious to hear from him. How bad is it, my love? Asked Komori. It took him a second to breathe in and lay out the truth for everyone. Himiko is missing. She went with the League and they kidnapped Eri-chan. And it's all my fault, he said, looking at the floor again. The teachers mentioned the possibility of a traitor, but he just couldn't imagine any of the people he knew being a spy, so he didn't factor this in at all. At the end of the day, he was the sole cause of this huge mess, and he wasn't shocked that this surprised everyone around him. How did this happen? Kaminari quietly said, both thinking out loud and throwing the question everyone had in their minds at Midoriya. I made a mistake. I trusted her, and this was the result. I'm sorry. He wasn't sure to who he was apologizing. His classmates? His harem? Ire? Himself? Regardless, one person made their way to Midoriya with a rather neutral face. A pair of ruby-red eyes focused on his emerald green ones. Who cares about what happened? Just fix it, Deku. Bakugo told him with a very level voice. There wasn't as much malice or aggression in his tone as usual, which was kind of even scarier. To this, Midoriya had no words, so he simply walked past Bakugo and went to his room. Oi, Bakugo, be more reasonable. At a time like this, Midoriya-kun is feeling the worst. Huh? And what does that have to do with me? Shitty glasses. And old Bakugo was back. Such improper language. Right now we need to stay united and... Let him be, Ida. Todoroki stopped the class rep with an arm. Everyone is worried, and Midoriya definitely is feeling the worst. Just give it some time. Ida fixed his glasses. Everyone remained mostly in silence since there wasn't much to be said here. As for the girls, after that little exchange, they followed Midoriya to his room, crowding in front of his door. Uraraka hesitated a bit but knocked on it. Deku-kun, can we get in? There was a moment of silence from the other side before the door opened, and he quietly let them inside. Good thing Yue made their rooms quite large, but even so, it felt full. He imagined this would happen. The girls clearly wanted more answers. However, they didn't want to ask. He was already hurting and carrying this guilt by himself, so there was no need for extra punishment. Regardless, they had to make sense of the situation. Sigh, all right, I'll bite. Izu, how did Toga escape? Takage asked, taking the role of the bad girlfriend. I let her drink my blood. Then, when the League of Villains appeared here, she managed to copy my voice and unlock the collar. She probably tricked Eri into thinking it was me. But why did you give her blood? And why didn't you tell any of us? I thought that. He let out a tired sigh, sitting on the bed with both nads on his head. I thought she was different, that she could change. Obviously, I was wrong, and now we're in this mess. Okay, this didn't explain everything, but it wasn't something impossible to imagine. She was a manipulator after all, and she was pushing everyone's buttons, but the way Himeko acted around him was just too weird and straight up disgusting to them. Midoriya had a kind nature, and even after everything that she did to him, he was willing to give her a chance, even if they were against it. Now was not the time to say, I told you so, and they all unknowingly agreed on this. But once this mess was over, Deku-kun, do the teachers have a plan to find Eri-chan? If we all help then. No, he cut the brunette short. Then Midoriya raised his head, but he wasn't exactly looking at them. His usually bright green eyes looked almost glassy and vacant. A chill ran through Uraraka's spine as she saw her love like that. I will find her. The temperature seemed to drop in the room, and each of the girls was racking their brains to try and come up with something positive to cheer the distraught green teen when a knock on the door broke the tense atmosphere. Their heads turned to the door, and Midoriya in particular wondered who could it be since all his girls were here now. Well, almost all of them. Midoriya-san? It's me, T. Tatsuma. Came the voice from the other side, surprising everyone, but the girls more so. What was Rukiyu doing in here? As for the green-haired young man, Midoriya answered mindlessly. It's open. The knob turned, and the door was gently opened, and a blonde head poked inside. Her eyes fell upon the green teen, but quickly took notice of the rather large group of girls sitting in front of him. Oh, right. For a brief moment, Tatsuma forgot about Midoriya and his special relationship with his classmates, which only made this unexpected meeting more awkward for her. Do you mind if I, Oh, please, just go inside already, said another voice, followed by Tatsuma being pushed forward and into the bedroom. The door opened more to reveal a tanned woman with long white hair and red eyes, as well as bunny ears. Great, now 2 pro-heroes knocked at Midoriya's door, the girls thought. I see, said Maruko as she took in the scene. It's not like she cared much about Midoriya and that little group of buddies. Well, not so little, but she wasn't particularly bothered anyway. In fact, she was pretty confident she could snatch the Emerald Child for herself, but that wasn't the reason she came here to begin with. Not today, at least. The truth is that she followed Rukiu out of worry for the young man after they saw that scene at the principal's office. She would be lying if she said she wasn't at least a little concerned for his well-being. Now that they were here, Tatsuma only had to say what she had in mind to comfort Midoriya, but the extra guests made it more complicated for her. She felt like an intruder, but regardless, the blondie mustered the courage to speak to him. I know it doesn't help to solve the situation at hand, but if you ever need a place to rest and vent off, I'll always be available for you. She put it simply, taking a step closer to him and doing her best to ignore the many stares focused on her figure. Thanks, Tatsuma-san, Midoriya replied, again, rather coldly and automated. And if you have any other, needs to be taken care of, maybe in the after hours we could, It took him a minute to understand what she meant by that. Wait just a second, it was just that one time. And the old Midoriya was back, already flustered and with a faint pink hue crossing his cheeks. All I'm saying is, if you need some form of release, well, Nimiri and I spoke a little, and it seems you have, how do I put it, a lot of energy to spend. And doing so on the school grounds wouldn't be right so. Aha, I knew you would try to make a move. Maruko shouted from the back, closing the gap between them and pulling the blondie away from Midoriya by her arm. Who's making a move? Didn't you decide to follow me after I told you I wanted to see him? Yeah, because I knew you would try and make a move on him, you sneaky lizard. That's not my original intention. But now you're thinking about it, aren't you? Well, yeah, but only because you brought it up. All right, miss, if you have any other needs to be taken care of, I totally trust you. While the two pro-heroes argued, the girls watched the back and forth, occasionally glancing at the green teen sitting on his bed. Midoriya was covering his face, avoiding looking at the two adults discussing these things in front of his girlfriends. Then came the dreaded question, carried by none other than Uraraka. Past experiences gave her a pretty good idea of what was going on, but she wanted direct confirmation from her man. Deku-kun, what is this all about? You see? How should he explain this? It wasn't as if he wasn't in a similar situation before, but this time it was kind of beyond his control, with both Maruko and Rukiu being affected by the side effects of HP's quirk. That and Nimiri said he could, but she wasn't here to back him up right now. It wasn't a matter of just telling the truth, but how to say it while diffusing potential outbursts. I don't know, I think you're overcomplicating things. Just be upfront with them, Izuku. Nana said inside his mind. What? Do you want me to go hey? By the way, I had sec with both of them last night, but it is all good because they were under the influence of a weird quirk. They're going to jump on my neck this time. Oh please, they wouldn't dare hurt a hair of your precious head. Have more confidence, Izuku. Plus, I get it that you value their feelings and all, but let's be honest, you already developed a high libido that requires a lot of attention. They agreed to share you on that premise. So why be so hung up on it every time you have sec with a not-so-strange stranger woman? Nana-san, that's not exactly how it works. Sigh, I know, just, I don't know, be more assertive. You have proven your loyalty to them many times. You don't pick any girl that comes around your way, as a fact, and they'll end up embracing her into the sisterhood down the line. So why make a fuzz about it? Because I told them that wouldn't happen again. Well, at this point I would consider that's a given. You're just that charming. Not very helpful now, Nana-san. I know, I'm just teasing you to put you in a less gloomy mood. But at least be upfront with it. No need to beat around the bush. Nana's voice slowly faded into light chimes on the back of his head, and as Midoriya refocused on the real world, he met the expectant gazes of his girlfriends, the main brunette in particular, looking very impatient. Well, time to try this upfront policy. Well, the truth is, we kind of had sec last night, Ruko, Rumi, and I. Oh, you don't say, shouted the brunette. The two pro-heroes stopped bickering and turned to the group of youths, having their little secret ousted so casually. And Ninuri was there too. Of course she was. Why wouldn't she? Uraraka-san, calm down a little. Now is not the time to. Don't tell me to calm down, Kendo. This keeps happening over and over again, and I can't stand it. Why does every bitch around must have their eyes on my Deku-kun? She said to no one in particular, or perhaps she meant to ask whatever entity governed this universe. See, calm down, Uraraka-chan, I know how you feel, but now is not the time. Komori got closer to her, fanning the fellow brunette who was hyperventilating out of frustration. In his defense, we were quite pushy, and he did say he already has all of you girls. Tatsuma inserted herself into the conversation, hoping to de-escalate it a little. However, it only earned her mean looks from the one girls and skeptical gazes from the others. Yeah, he was stubborn pretty much all the way, even after Ninuri told him to bang me. Sheesh, you all keep that poor boy on a tight leash. To say Yuzujama's comment was not well received was an understatement. Even the more laid-back and less jealous ones looked at her with slight murderous intent. How shameful, Shiozaki murmured, and the girls nodded in agreement. Okay, I can tell when I'm not welcome. I'll shut up now. And anyway, they were under the influence of an unknown quirk. It wasn't entirely their fault. Midoriya got up to defend the two pro-heroes. Even so, was it absolutely necessary to have sex with them? Kodai asked, her usually monotone voice a little altered, indicating her annoyance with that. Even she was starting to think Uraraka had a point in being super protective of him if this was such a common occurrence. Well, that's debatable. It kind of happened in the heat of the moment, he said, scratching the back of his head. But you girls didn't give me much of a choice either, did you? A few of them raised a hand to object, but he wasn't wrong, so they all just nodded in silence. Well, so what now? Are they part of the gang? Do you love them? Do they love you? Takage asked, measuring the two women standing there. Tatsuma looked a little hesitant, nervous perhaps, while Yuzujama was just bored out of her mind, having her arms folded in front of her chest and slowly tapping her foot. After all that has happened last night, he did not confirm that. Midoriya was still under the assumption that all that was said was because of HP's blood and the effect it had on them. Even now he thought maybe Rukyu was feeling guilty, and Maruko might as well just be teasing him again, although he was pretty sure he left a very good impression with the tanned hero. He turned to the two of them, his emerald green eyes showing that usual gleam once again. So, do you feel any different? Or maybe you regret doing it with me? No, Tatsuma cut him short, taking a step closer to him. She refrained from jumping on the bed and embracing him in her bosom like before, with all those eyes focused on her. Every cell of her body was screaming at her to do so, but without the side effects coursing through her bloodstream. At least now Tatsuma could actually rein these emotions and desires. I don't regret saying what I said. I do believe my actions crossed the line, but, her eyes locked with his. I stand by every word I said. I still want you to be my treasure. It was a little weird to see a grown-up woman confess her feelings in such a shy manner, almost as if she was just a teenager. Then again, if the girls spend more time with the pro-hero, they would find out she was still a pure young maiden in the heart. For now, the harem's verdict was acceptable. And how about you? Jiro asked, and their eyes focused on the rabbit hero, who flinched a bit. Me? No, I'm just after big boy's big boy. I don't need all the lovey-dovey mushy stuff, she said, waving a hand in dismissal, but surprisingly, the girls still held their skeptical glares at her. What? I'm serious. I don't love that brat or anything. It's just that he can be super when he wants and, well, last night was good and, why, You do realize we won't allow any random chick to have her way with our Izuku-kun, right? Tsunatori told her calmly. Oh yeah, and what are you gonna do to stop me? She taunted the horned blondie. As the saying goes, go around and find out. regardless of the language. The message was delivered. Well, whatever, just don't be disheartened when your man comes to me later on. Admitting defeat was not something Maruko allowed herself to do, and it wasn't different with a bunch of horny teenagers, as she put it a few times. Between now and last night, Midoriya couldn't decide how honest she was being, but that wasn't the biggest of his concerns by a large margin. But at least he still had something precious in his life to help him keep afloat. The news of Eri being kidnapped was so shocking that it knocked him back to a very dark place. There was no time to feel guilty or think about what he could have done differently. She needed his help, and by everything sacred on this blue earth, he would save her. Sigh, thank heavens. He heard Uraraka sigh in relief. You were looking so depressed and gloomy earlier, I got really scared. But now you're looking like your normal self again. Deku-kun, even if the circumstances are not the best, I'm glad. Her honest smile, as well as the relieved faces of his lovers, further improved his mood. Midoriya was still dead serious inside, but right now he allowed himself to indulge a little in this warm moment. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through What If Everyone Gets Obsessed with Deku and Harem. I hope you found it as intriguing and thought-provoking as we did. A big shout out to Guy number 23 for crafting such a compelling story. Don't forget to check out their profile on fanfiction.net for more amazing works. The link is in the description below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to What If Deku 2 for more fascinating explorations into the world of fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we're always excited to hear your thoughts and suggestions in the comments section. See you guys in the next video.